One day, out of nowhere, a massive gate appeared in the sky, unleashing a horde of monsters, turning the world into a real-life monster hunter dungeon. They were just waiting to rush out and wreak havoc. Deep within that monster world, there was a key that could open and close this dimensional gate. However, if that key were destroyed, there would be no way to escape the dungeon. Inside one such dungeon, our protagonist was completely freaking out after being dragged to the edge of a cliff. "Boss Jang, why are you doing this to me? Did you mistake me for someone else?" The man named Jiang sneered contemptuously. "Mistake you? You're really getting on my nerves. So much I could laugh. You're just a worthless F-ranker, yet you dared to compete with me for loot. If word got out, how could I maintain my reputation in this business anymore?" As soon as he finished speaking, he coldly let go, and Fang Wan Jie's heart pounded in terror. He plummeted down the cliff face. Above, the group of wicked awakeners just laughed casually. "Ha ha. Still a coward, even as he's about to die. Su Jinyu must have been completely blind to ever see anything in him." After that, Boss Jang destroyed the dimensional key sealing the dungeon. He wanted to completely eliminate any chance of Fang Wan Jie's survival. At this moment, our hero had hit the bottom of the ravine, the impact seemingly shattering every bone in his body. Although he wasn't dead yet, he had absolutely no strength left. Fang Wan Jie had survived the fall, only to immediately come face to face with a monster. With his talent at rock bottom and his strength completely drained, he was powerless to resist. Just then, another monster appeared on the scene, and the two creatures immediately started fighting. This was a stroke of luck in a terrible situation, and Fang Wan Jie seized the opportunity, while they were distracted, to make a desperate escape. Unfortunately, other monsters had already caught the scent of his blood, and were swarming to his location. Seeing the horde of monsters swarming around him, Fang Wan Jie felt completely hopeless. He kept running, but even a tiny one-eyed monster dared to pick on him. Powerless, Fang Wan Jie grabbed a sharp rock and hurled it right into the creature's eye. He never expected this would just make the monster go berserk. Its body rapidly transformed, growing several times larger and more ferocious. Fang Wan Jie cursed under his breath. "Looks like this is the legendary stress-induced mutation." The monster's tentacles furiously wrapped around Fang Wan Jie, then slammed him against the cliff wall in retaliation. Fang Wan Jie could even hear his own bones shattering as a wave of despair washed over him. He thought to himself, "This is it, I'm not making it back this time." As he fell, the necklace around his neck snapped, revealing a picture of Su Jinyu. Tears streamed down his face as he mumbled, "I'm sorry, Jinyu. I promised that once I made enough money, I'd take you to the best hospital and hire the best doctors, but it looks like I'm going to break that promise." The moment Fang Wan Jie closed his eyes and gave up all hope, a blinding golden light suddenly descended from the sky, forcing all the monsters to recoil in terror. He was lifted into the air, and a beautiful angel appeared before him. She clasped her hands together and began a ritual to bestow a talent, her own divine angelic talent, upon Fang Wan Jie, a true SSS rank awakening. He didn't know who this was, but she seemed to be an acquaintance, because this angel called him by the intimate name, Little G. It's said that once a talent is given away, it can never be recovered, but the angel didn't care in the slightest, resolutely bestowing it upon Fang Wan Jie. She even chose to keep her identity a secret from him. "Little G, take my talent and live a good life." As Fang, after his SSS rank awakening, Van Keep found himself flying on a pair of massive wings, a sword having mysteriously appeared in his hand. He hovered arrogantly above, looking down on the horde of monsters, and his sword unconsciously traced 2 slashes through the air. They seemed like casual swings, but those 2 slashes instantly annihilated the entire monster horde below, leaving only a single creature. The last one standing was the mutated Cyclops from earlier. Along with Fuang Van Keep's new power came a regression system, which at that moment had just notified him that he was rapidly adapting to his talent, but as Fuang Van Keep faced the monster, that Cyclops, the system sent a warning that his use of the limited talent was nearing its threshold, and his body would soon be overloaded. After its mutation, this creature's combat power was no joke. From its single eye, it could fire a world-shaking beam of power that managed to suppress even Fuang Van Keep. This feeling of being completely overpowered by an enemy made him remember all the times he was helpless without an awakened power, before other awakeners had always looked down on him, trampling him as they pleased. Fuang Van Keep's rage began to boil over, and the system immediately warned that the talent was incompatible with him. His resentment was causing an overload. His immense resentment overloaded and caused the system to crash. Now only a single thought remained in Fuang Van Keep's mind. Annihilate every last one of these monsters. The system had officially crashed, and despite multiple reboot attempts, it kept failing. Fang Wan Jie went berserk, and the shimmering golden sword in his hand began to turn black, tainted by his immense resentment. The angel's mark on his forehead started to shatter, and the angelic wings on his back gave way to a pair of demonic, bat-like wings. Fang Wan Jie had undergone a complete dark transformation. Just then, the system rebooted, but its first notification announced that his talent had mutated. When the monster's tentacles lashed out again, Fang Wan Jie effortlessly parried the attack. With every step he took, his body was seemingly enveloped in a new layer of formidable armor. This armor was forged from his boundless resentment. The final name for his talent was Necro Angel, no longer the Divine Angel. Like a demon from an overpowered MC, Manhwa Fang Wan Jie walked step by step toward the monster, his sword aimed straight at it, his expression utterly cold. He said coldly, "I'll give you one chance. Call all your allies here. Monsters are just mindless creatures after all." So upon hearing Fang Wan Jie's command, it actually summoned all of its kind. The number of monsters was staggering, but Fang Wan Jie paid them no mind. He began his frenzied slaughter. This was a true monster hunter dungeon, and the more beasts that appeared, the more he annihilated. In the end, only the Cyclops was left standing, but there was no way Fang Wan Jie was going to let it live. After taking down the Cyclops, just when he thought the monster wave was over, a massive swarm of queen bees appeared. Fang Wan Jie had never seen so many monsters at once, and his battle lust began to boil. He simply raised his hand and snapped his fingers. A blinding golden light descended from the sky, and the entire swarm of queen bees was wiped out with that single snap. Once the dust settled, Fang Wan Jie lazily remarked, "Isn't it supposed to be blue? Looks like a complete awakening, still needs more time." By the time Fang Wan Jie had completely calmed down, the monster horde had been utterly pulverized. From their corpses, he could harvest a massive amount of mana cores, the very thing every awakener covets. Fang Wan Jie now had so many he could have sold them wholesale. He picked one up and tried to absorb it like any other hunter would, but the system immediately sent a notification that Fang Wan Jie couldn't absorb this thing, left him completely stunned. It's a known fact that the mana within a monster core is the primary energy source. For an awakened, to enhance their abilities, and absorbing or selling them is the biggest motivation for any monster hunter. To enter a monster hunter dungeon, but now despite his recent SSS rank awakening, Fang Wan Jie still couldn't absorb its energy. He tried a few more times to no avail, but on the contrary, a different kind of energy was continuously flowing into Fang Wan Jie's body. He looked around, and this energy felt like the death aura coming from the monster corpses. If this was true, Fang Wan Jie could become an absolutely overpowered MC because he wouldn't need to absorb monster cores anymore. He could just keep getting stronger by killing monsters. Just then, a dire wolf tried to launch a sneak attack on Fang Wan Jie, but unfortunately for it, he sliced it in two. The process of absorbing the death aura ended, and the first thing Fang Wan Jie wanted to do was get back to Su Qin Yu, but the dungeon entrance had already closed. Clearly that bastard Jiang wanted to trap him in here forever. Of course Fang Wan Jie couldn't let him get his way, but for now he had no idea how to escape this place. He had no choice but to head back into the dungeon, continuously leveling up while trying to figure out a way to get out. But he never expected to be trapped for so long. In his first year, locked in the dungeon, Fang Wan Jie had taken down 175,565 monsters. His power had grown immensely to the point where he no longer needed his armor to deal with common monsters. Undead armor. Fang Wan Jie survived for a whole year in this dungeon by drinking spring water and eating monster meat. He then remembered something important last year. Su Qin Yu had shown him an illustrated monster guide, and in it was a drawing of a Serapis, the key holder. Back then, the Serapis was a hot topic in the hunter community. It only appears when all the monsters in a dungeon have been completely wiped out. It was said that finding one could set you up for life, living in an endless sea, wandering between reality and illusion. When the world within the gate resets, a new key will be forged. Back then, Fang Wan Jie thought Su Qin Yu was just speaking in riddles, but now thinking back, he realized it meant that once all the monsters in the dungeon were cleared, the world would reset once more, and a new key would appear, allowing Fang Wan Jie to get out. That's why he started grinding monsters non-stop after the first year. The number of monsters he'd killed reached 386,170, and in the third year, it was 1,588,702. Fang Wan Jie felt incredibly lonely, feeling like he could never wipe out all these monsters. Then, in the 10th year, Fang Wan Jie reached the sea where the monsters spawned, and there an S-rank monster appeared. To deal with this high-level monster, he had to go all out. Fang Wan Jie donned his armor and began the fight. Never before had he felt so tense. In this battle, a single mistake would cost him his life, which would mean his 10 years of non-stop grinding would be for nothing. However, this monster's power was on a completely different level compared to the ones he'd killed before. It was just too different. Even though Fang Wan Jie had trained relentlessly for 10 years, he still struggled immensely when facing it, even getting a chunk of his body bitten off. At times like this, Fang Wan Jie really just wanted to give up and die, but even after 10 years, he could never forget his grudge against Jangun, and he certainly couldn't forget his love for Su. Remembering Jinyu, Fang Wan Jie's fighting spirit was reignited. He swore he would slay every last monster and capture the key holder Serapis. Fueled by this mix of love and vengeance, Fang Wan Jie survived for 20 years in this monster hunter dungeon, but this year, he hadn't managed to kill a single monster, because the entire dungeon was left with only one creature, the Griffin. This creature was drawn to the light of the treasure tree at the center of the dungeon, so today, Fang Wan Jie had specifically waited here to ambush it. However, his opponent was not only powerful, but also possessed an incredibly fast healing factor. Fang Wan Jie had struggled for an entire year but couldn't defeat it. Even when his foe used its ultimate attack, he still struggled. Just like the very first time, Fang Wan Jie was getting absolutely thrashed. The speed and power behind the magical attacks of the Griffin were almost incomprehensible. This was the only SSS rank beast he had ever encountered, and the only one he couldn't handle. His opponent had a superior physique, immense power, and an intellect so high it could even speak. "Become my slave, and I will spare your life," the Griffin said. As expected of a high-rank beast, it could even try to bargain with a human. However, Fang Wan Jie was not the kind of man to submit to a monster bird. His body had already transformed into something half-human and half-demon. Fang Wan Jie had nothing left to fear in this world. Seeing his stubbornness, the Griffin decided to show no more mercy. But strangely, as it attacked this time, Fang Wan Jie didn't even try to dodge. The moment its claw touched him, it was instantly corroded by an immense power. This was because moments ago, on the brink of death, the dark tide within Fang Wan Jie's body had activated. It was like an SSS rank awakening, a get-out-of-death-free card that made him immune to damage from all attacks for a short time. However, the dark tide could also inflict irreparable damage on magical beasts. The Griffin likely never saw this coming. It had been too arrogant, giving Fang Wan Jie just enough time to recover. And now it was the one on the defensive. At some point, this overpowered MC had already placed a necromantic forbidden curse around the monster's neck, and the moment he activated it, the Griffin's head was sliced clean off its neck. This was the final monster in this dungeon. Just as Su Jinyu had said after the Griffin was defeated, the dungeon instance began to reset. A space-time portal shining with a blinding light appeared in the sky, and from that portal Serapis slowly descended in the form of a child. Fang Wan Jie's eyes lit up at the sight. He quickly spread his wings and flew up to catch Serapis. Its body was as soft as water, but no matter how much Fang Wan Jie searched, he couldn't find the key. Serapis started crying like a newborn, but Fang Wan Jie was out of patience. He frantically searched for the key while screaming, "Give me the key! Give it to me now! Give me the key!" Fang Wan Jie's roar was so loud, it seemed to echo throughout the entire dungeon. Then Serapis's body began to twist and contort. When the transformation was complete, a golden key appeared right in the middle of its body. Fang Wan Jie reached out for it, tears streaming down his face. It had been 20 years since this game began, 20 years of imprisonment, and he had finally waited for this day. When Fang Wan Jie emerged, his surroundings were still a desolate wasteland. This made him truly wonder if he was still inside the dungeon. While he was still disoriented, Fang Wan Jie was suddenly a wild boar suddenly attacked. He mistook it for a beast from a monster hunter dungeon and punched it with all his might, only to realize after a closer look that it was just an ordinary wild boar. Fang Wan Jie was a bit disappointed, not expecting his current power was only enough to knock out a boar. It seemed that all the death energy he had accumulated was depleted to prevent the world's collapse, a reset that felt like a twisted regression system. Now, Fang Wan Jie was no different from an ordinary low-rank, awakened. He wandered for a long time, and found a small cabin like the ones hunters used to rest. Starving Fang Wan Jie took a chance and went inside to find food. No one was home, only a blood-stained skeleton and some clothes. Fang Wan Jie grabbed a set of clothes to wear, then noticed a map. He had been sealed in a dungeon for 20 years, so this item would definitely be useful, so he took it. Before leaving, Fang Wan Jie didn't forget to leave a mana core as payment for the clothes. Following the map, he found the hospital where Su Jinyu had stayed. Before he could even go in, a young man, handing out flyers, approached. "Hello, please support the Raging Soul Guild." Fang Wan Jie didn't know what Raging Soul was, so he curiously took a flyer. To his surprise, the person on the flyer was Jangun. After 20 years in the dungeon, Fang Wan Jie still looked like he was 19 years old, but Jangun had visibly aged. Before he could react, the large screen in the square also displayed his image. The bastard who pushed him off a cliff back then had now become the guild master of Raging Soul, strong enough to single-handedly defeat an S-rank magic beast at the age of 38, a feat that put him on the path to an SSS rank awakening. Not only that, he was also the most beloved awakened. His guild had acquired 50 dungeon keys in the last 10 years, and even donated 10 keys for the good of society. Fang Wan Jie listened to the praises for Jiang Kun, how he was responsible, talented, and so on, and his hands itched for a fight. However, he didn't have time to settle the score with him just yet. He crumpled the flyer into a ball and threw it straight into the trash. Fang Wan Jie entered the hospital. 20 years had passed, but the place had barely changed. Before he could ask about Su Jinyu, he saw an old woman crying pitifully to a priest. "Priest, please, save my son. I've worked for free in this hospital for so long." The money she earned wasn't enough to cover her son's hospital bills. If she wanted the surgery, she needed at least a B-rank mana core, the other person replied coldly, pushing the old woman away. Fang Wan Jie quickly caught her. The two of them recognized each other instantly. Although the woman had aged and looked more worn down, he still recognized her as Nurse Zhang, who used to be in charge of Su Jinyu's hospital room. "Miss Zhang, which room is Jinyu in now? Take me to see her." It was unclear if this young man was too foolish or just too naive to ask such a question. Who could possibly stay in a hospital for 20 years? If they weren't cured, they would have passed away long ago. Sure enough, after his question, Nurse Zhang's eyes filled with tears. She did indeed take Fang Wan Jie to visit Su Jinyu, but it was to visit her grave. According to her story, Su Jinyu passed away right after Fang Wan Jie entered the dungeon. It was a tragic twist, almost like a failed reincarnation power fantasy, where the hero returns too late. Her condition had been improving, but suddenly took a turn for the worse. 2 mid-rank priests took turns blessing Su Jinyu, but they still couldn't bring her back. At that time, Fang Wan Jie hadn't returned, and with no money, Nurse Zhang had to pay out of her own pocket to build this grave for her. Fang Wan Jie didn't even realize when tears started streaming down his face. He took out an S-rank spirit core as a thank you gift for Mrs. Zhang, who had helped him bury Su Jinyu. At first, Mrs. Zhang didn't dare to accept it because it was too valuable, but Fang Wan Jie kept encouraging her. Besides, her son needed money for medical treatment, so in the end, Mrs. Zhang accepted the action. "Spirit core, you should head back first. I want to be alone with Jinyu for a while." After Mrs. Zhang left, Fang Wan Jie pulled out from his pocket a handful of S-rank spirit cores. This was his entire collection from the past 10 years. All the low-rank cores had been discarded by Fang Wan Jie. He had carefully selected the most valuable ones, even calculating that this stash could cure Su Jinyu, and he could even use the 5 most beautiful ones to make a necklace for her. But now, Su Jinyu was gone, and that pile of precious magic cores no longer meant anything to Fang Wan Jie. He buried his face on his girlfriend's grave and cried, his heart out, completely unaware that the deathly aura of the cemetery was silently seeping into his body. Just as Fang Wan Jie was at his most heartbroken, a modern airship with a giant LED screen flew by, still broadcasting news about Jiang Kun and his Raging Soul Guild. Dear viewers, hurry and log on to the official website and enter the phrase "Long Live Jiang Kun" for a chance to win a 1 billion cash prize. The broadcast from the airship was deafening, and the words "Long Live Jiang Kun" pushed Fang Wan Jie over the edge. Filled with overwhelming resentment, he threw a powerful punch into the air. The resulting wave of power was so immense it sliced the airship clean in two. Jiang Kun, who was leisurely sipping wine not far away, also witnessed the event. The airship's explosion completely ruined his mood. Back at the cemetery, Fang Wan Jie was still consumed by rage, continuously being enveloped by the deathly aura. It seemed that thanks to this centuries-old cemetery, he had already regained nearly half of his original strength. Afterwards, Fang Wan Jie headed to the Awakened Communication and Exchange Center. The place was as bustling as ever, generally filled with awakeners who didn't want to be tied down by a guild. There were also freelance Monster Hunter dungeon support staff, just like he used to be. Returning this time, After 20 years in what felt like a true reincarnation power, fantasy, Fang Wan Jie's mindset was completely different. That bastard Jangun must think he had long since perished in a dungeon. Therefore, the safest approach was to keep a low profile until he was absolutely ready for revenge. While walking around the center, Fang Wan Jie happened to witness a negotiation. An awakener was trying to sell a magic beast's corpse, but it seemingly had no spirit core inside, so the buyer wanted a lower price. Just as the seller was about to compromise, Fang Wan Jie suddenly intervened. He had seen many of the magic beasts that man was holding in dungeons before. Its spirit core wasn't hidden inside its body like other monsters. To control its tentacles, the core usually grew in front of its claws. Sure enough, after cutting off its claw, Fang Wan Jie found a C-rank spirit core. The awakener who was selling it couldn't hide his joy. This beast had 6 claws, which meant he had 6 C-rank spirit cores. To thank Fang Wan Jie for his help, the young man was very considerate and offered him one. But in a classic overpowered MC Manhwa move, he naturally had no interest in such a low-rank core. If that guy knew he had a pile of S-rank cores, a treasure trove hinting at a future SSS-rank awakening, it would probably scare him to death. Although Fang Wan Jie didn't accept the gift, I'd rather you repay me another way. I overheard you're heading into a monster hunter dungeon. Can you take me with you? The young man was completely baffled. Normally people come to this center for money, and he had just offered cash to Fang Wan Jie, who turned it down and was now asking to enter a dungeon. Why do you want to go into a dungeon? For an awakened? At his level, even if Fang Wan Jie honestly explained he needed to absorb death energy inside, the guy wouldn't understand. So, he made up a story about being a monster researcher who wanted to see the creatures up close. Kid, what kind of SSS rank awakening did you get? The man continued to ask. Fang Wan Jie couldn't exactly reveal his talent, was the Necro Angel, so he lied again, claiming he had no talent but could handle support duties effectively. As expected, in this era, normal people are always looked down on by the awakened. The moment he said this, a long-haired guy sitting nearby burst out laughing. His smile was dripping with sarcasm, and his words were just as venomous. A talentless loser should just find a part-time job at the guild. At least you won't get yourself killed in there. In contrast, the first young man seemed much kinder. Little bro, don't mind this guy's harsh words. But our squad is small, only 3 to 5 members. We really can't risk taking someone without a talent along. You have to understand that having just one normal person in a small party significantly reduces our overall combat effectiveness. And they also become dead weight, endangering not only their own life, but the entire team's. Our overpowered MC, Fang Wan Jie, pretended not to hear them. He focused on the long-haired guy's injured right arm. He'd heard the guy had tried to pass the test for the Raging Soul Guild, but overestimated his abilities and got wounded. When his friend called him out, the long-haired guy got extremely embarrassed. Shut up, who asked you to run your mouth? Fang Wan Jie wasn't trying to mock him, he was just observing that the wound wasn't normal. The opening was contaminated with aldehyde poison, an extremely potent toxin that requires a healer to cure, costing at least half a B-rank monocore for a single treatment. What you talk, a big game. Like that, as if you can actually cure it. The long-haired guy covered his wound, but Fang Wan Jie just smiled. Of course, I'm only flexing because I know I can cure it. He then asked for a discarded beast claw from the person who bought monster parts earlier, then shoved it into the long-haired guy's mouth and told him to eat it. The claw was just a diversion. In reality, Fang Wan Jie had used that opportunity to secretly use his death energy to decompose the protein-based toxin on the man's arm without being noticed. When the guy saw his wound had completely healed without costing him a single cent, he was ecstatic. The brawny hunter also had to look at Fang Wan Jie in a new light. His knowledge of monsters would be a huge asset to them, so he quickly changed his tune. After all, who wouldn't want a monster expert like you on their team? Welcome to our party. And just like that, Fang Wan Jie had successfully joined their team. As he was leaving with his new party members, Fang Wan Jie was spotted by a man. More accurately, the man's attention was caught by the clothes our protagonist was wearing. The man then picked up his phone and made a call to his big boss. The anxious voice of an older man came through the line. What is it? Have you found my son? Not yet, no sir, but I've discovered a crucial piece of intelligence. I found someone wearing your son's clothes from the exchange center. I'm sure those clothes carry his scent, or to be more precise, the scent of his corpse is more accurate. It's unclear which young master's clothes Fang Wan Jie accidentally picked up, but after today, he's got a tail. The man who was ordered to follow Fang Wan Jie then casually approached their group of 3. He used wanting to join their party as an excuse to strike up a conversation, even faking his talent as enhanced 5 senses, which explains why his nose is sharper than a bloodhound's. His current class is an archer, and the big guy was thrilled to hear that, immediately drawing the great sword from his belt. It wasn't easy to finally gather 5 people. Let's go. Fang Wan Jie was a little confused about the 5 people part, since including him, there were only 4 of them here. Right, but when the burly party leader led them to the edge of the forest, he finally understood. Their party had one more member, a young girl already waiting for them. From the moment they met, she seemed to avoid Fang Wan Jie's gaze. But even so, he could tell this person wasn't human, but a demonic beast. Her disguise was nearly flawless. Even the archer with his so-called super senses couldn't detect anything odd. It's just that our overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist has the experience of slaying 40 million monsters over 20 years, so she couldn't possibly fool him. But strangely enough, despite being a demonic beast, she had absolutely no killing intent, a first for Fang Wan Jie. After everyone was ready, the party leader took out a silver key. Fang Wan Jie looked at its color with a hint of disappointment. Seems like this monster hunter dungeon wouldn't have any truly tough bosses. The portal opened, and the 5 of them began to enter the dungeon. Fang Wan Jie was still a bit baffled by the idea of raiding a dungeon with a disguised demonic beast. While he was lost in thought, the long-haired guy spoke up again, his words as sharp as ever, but his tone had softened slightly. Since you saved my life, I'm giving you some genuine advice. Don't go in there just to die. Mr. Monsterologist, shut your mouth, Fang Wan Jie finally snapped, growling out each word. It's hard to say if it was because of the massive power gap, but the pressure he emitted sent a chill down the long-haired guy's spine. He cursed Fang Wan Jie for being a stubborn fool who couldn't take a hint, then quickly ran ahead. But at this point, despite his suspicions about the demonic beast girl, he felt there was no turning back and decisively entered. In this dungeon, the terrain was primarily volcanic. Even though there were no extremely dangerous monsters, the party leader still had to remind everyone to be careful, because the high temperatures and carbon dioxide could suffocate them at any moment. The signature monster in this dungeon is the lava hound. Their monocores and molars are extremely valuable. With that said, he began assigning roles. The big guy specialized in melee combat, so he paired up with the long-haired guy Akui because he was a mage. The demonic beast girl Ma Xiaoqin was a control type, awakened, similar to the archer, so they were put on the same team. They assumed Fang Wan Jie was talentless, so naturally, they assigned him the job of item collector. It had been 20 years since he'd done this kind of work, bringing back a wave of nostalgia. Just as they finalized their formation, the first wave of monsters appeared. They might be called lava hounds, but these monsters didn't look anything like dogs. The time limit for this monster hunter dungeon was 1 hour, so they were determined to clear it as fast as possible and grab all the loot they could. The team captain and Atui's group attacked first. While the captain closed in for melee combat, the mage used his ice-type magic to provide support from the back. The scorching magma rocks were transformed into razor-sharp icicles, which shot toward the pack of magma hounds at incredible speed, impaling and killing many of them in the very first assault. Tui shot a look at Fang Wan Jie, his expression clearly saying, "See how amazing I am, now hurry up and collect the loot." The charming mage urged Fang Wan Jie to just do his job, and even though the long-haired guy's attitude was infuriating, Fang Wan Jie decided to see it as an opportunity to practice his patience. Besides, during the process of gathering loot, he could also absorb death energy, so it wasn't a complete loss for him. On the other side, Ma Xiaojin and the archer had also moved out, but the archer didn't seem very happy about it. After all, his mission was to watch Fang Wan Jie, yet here he was stuck in a group with Ma Xiaojin. Moreover, this woman was incredibly strange, not having spoken a single word the entire time. He was lost in thought for just a moment, when they were suddenly surrounded by a pack of magma hounds. The archer looked around, clearly starting to panic. Just then, the demonkin girl finally spoke. "Don't panic. Wait for my lead." Despite being a young girl, her composure was greater than that of most men. The 2 horns on her head began to emit sonic waves. The initially ferocious magma hounds suddenly became weak after just a few seconds, as if they'd been stunned. At that moment, Ma Xiaojin signaled for the archer to make his move. He glanced to his left, and then to his right. There were 11 monsters on the right, and 6 on the left. He calculated the perfect trajectory, and then decisively fired a single arrow. This arrow seemed to have a mind of its own, not flying straight, but gracefully weaving through each of the dazed monsters. It wiped them all out in a single pass, then the arrow returned to its owner's hand like a boomerang. Meanwhile, the team captain and Tui had already taken down 21 magma hounds, growing more exhilarated with each kill. But Fang Wan Jie looked utterly dejected. This was the classic struggle in an overpowered MC Manhwa. The reason was that this group was only farming D-rank monsters, and based on their current pace, he would only recover 1% of his power at best after clearing the dungeon. Seeing his gloomy face, Tui assumed that Fang Wan Jie was just scared by all the blood and gore, so he took the opportunity to show off even more of his skills to flex on him. This time, Tui used his Frost Spike Lance skill, conjuring a massive, double-ended ice spike that pierced through a magma hound's head. The monster thrashed and growled while on the other side, Tui kept pouring more magic into his spell to finish it off. Fang Wan Jie looked up and instantly realized something was wrong. He yelled out urgently, "Get away from it, stop channeling magic, let the captain finish it with his blade." Unfortunately, Tui wasn't one to take orders, especially from someone he considered a talentless weakling like Fang Wan Jie. "Don't think you can order me around just because you saved my life once." Tui snarled, continuing to use his howling frost magic. A thick layer of ice nearly encased the magma hound's entire body, but it still wasn't enough damage to finish it off. Fang Wan Jie knew this guy was a lost cause. If you can't one-shot the enemy the more you attack, attacking it only increases the chance of a stress-induced mutation. How could Thui not understand such a simple principle? Was he that desperate to show off? Just as our MC from this reincarnation power fantasy feared the worst-case scenario happened. The lava hound took only 2 seconds to fully mutate, easily shattering the thick ice reinforced by Thui's multiple layers of magic. He probably never saw this coming, his face a complex mix of fear and utter shock. "What is this monster? I've never seen anything like it." "Well, you've never seen it because it just mutated, you moron, but this fool truly doesn't know his own limits," continuing to attack even after seeing what the opponent had become. This time he used his glacial piercer skill again, forming a sharp sword of ice and snow in Thui's hand. But the moment he thrust the sword, it shattered into 2 pieces upon contact with the monster's body. This action not only failed to do any damage, but enraged it even further as lava began to surge violently from its body. Just like a mobile volcano, Fuang Van Keep was incredibly frustrated. "This idiot again, always forcing me to step in." At this point, Thui was genuinely terrified, but his legs had turned to jelly and he couldn't run. Left with no choice, Fuang Van Keep used his magnetic force to pull the dazed Thui away and toss him down. The team leader, of course, had no idea Fuang Van Keep was behind it, so he just wondered when Thui had managed an SSS rank awakening of a flight skill. As for that coward, the moment he regained his senses, he urged the big guy to retreat. "Boss, this thing is way out of our league. We need to get out of this monster hunter dungeon now. This guy is the king of arrogance and the king of cowards." The leader obviously refused. They had just entered the dungeon. Leaving without any loot would be a complete waste. Seeing that Thui had completely lost his nerve, the big guy knew he was useless and sent Mutation to control it. Compared to Thui, she was much calmer, but unfortunately, the mutated lava hound was on a completely different level, so her 2 control horns were no longer effective against the beast. Meanwhile, Thui just kept whining on the sidelines, begging to leave, which really got on the leader's nerves. They tried to keep a safe distance from the enemy to formulate a plan, but just then, Thui was grabbed by Fuang Van Keep's magnetic force and hurled straight towards the monster's mouth. Mutation couldn't understand why he was suddenly committing suicide, and Thui himself had no idea what kind of power was controlling him. He struggled, but it was futile. At this rate, he was about to fall right into the lava hound's mouth. Just then, a massive torrent of lava erupted from the monster's mouth. Fuang Van Keep's magnetic force swiftly yanked Thui aside to dodge. His role was simply to be bait, helping our MC trick the monster into using its ultimate skill. Now that it's on cooldown, it's the perfect chance for our overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist to strike. Although he wanted to play the hero, Fuang Van Keep, with his secret regression system knowledge, knew it wasn't the right time. He only dared to use his magnetic force to materialize a legendary sword in Thui's hand. The guy protested with all his might, but found he couldn't let go of the blade. The sword rocketed towards the monster, dragging him along for the ride. He never expected that, with just this one single strike, he would slice the mutated lava hound clean in half. Thui was so terrified he was a crying, snotty mess, even though he'd landed the final blow. Even after felling the monster, the sword's trajectory continued to carve through a huge chunk of the monster hunter dungeon, leaving Fang Wan Jie so exhausted he could barely breathe. This was his first time using his aura to control another person, and it was far more difficult than fighting himself. Fang Wan Jie had completely lost control of the power, and by the time Athoi came to his senses, the legendary sword had disappeared. The monster was slain, but his breathing was ragged, and his heart was hammering in his chest. He couldn't even begin to process what had just happened, and that useless hulking team captain actually thought it was all Athoi's own power, so he laughed heartily. I never knew you were hiding such an overpowered move. Athoi, just now. You really scared the hell out of me. Even though the scoundrel had no idea how he'd pulled it off when the credit landed in his lap, only a fool would turn it down. He let out a few dry laughs. I just rise to the occasion. Fang Wan Jie scowled, thinking the guy was just desperate for the spotlight. He couldn't believe he had the nerve to claim that power for himself. After dealing with this mutated hound, they had essentially cleared out all the lava hounds. The dungeon was supposed to be open for 10 hours, but the party of 5 managed to clear it in just 3 hours. The archer asked, so, what do we do now? The team captain then made a suggestion. The reason he'd managed to get the dungeon key for cheap was because many hunters had already died. In here, there was a cave deep inside the dungeon that remained unexplored because everyone who went in never came back out. He'd worked up the courage to approach it a few times but always stopped at the entrance. Today, after seeing Athoi one-shot a B-rank monster, the captain was eager to lead everyone there. When Athoi heard this, he was scared witless. He was about to refuse, but Fang Wan Jie forced him silent. Then he controlled Athoi to nod his head vigorously. Seeing him agree so eagerly, the captain immediately led the group to the cave, which was shaped like a giant skull, a truly chilling sight. The paths inside are complicated, so everyone stick together. The captain shouted a warning, but the moment he finished, he realized everyone else was gone except for Athoi. Although this guy was built like a tank, he was a complete coward in this situation, so he clung tightly to Athoi, the man who had just one-shotted the B-rank monster to feel safe. Fang Wan Jie had already separated from the group right as they entered, relying on his experience from his regression system. He knew monsters in these kinds of caves typically wait for a party to venture deep inside before sealing the entrance and surrounding and annihilating them. They were likely hiding at the fork near the entrance, waiting to ambush. Fang Wan Jie moved with incredible agility, almost as if he were flying, but he probably didn't realize the archer was tailing him as the man had always wanted, to find a chance to interrogate him alone. So when Fang Wan Jie broke off from the party, he immediately gave chase. Fang Wan Jie ventured deeper into the cave and finally came across the pack of lava monsters. There were more than 5 of them, and every single one looked like it had undergone multiple mutations. The archer, watching from the shadows, broke out in a cold sweat at the sight, thinking that in this situation not even a B-rank awakened could escape, so Fang Wan Jie was about to be torn to shreds. It was so hard to find a lead, and now it's about to be snuffed out, damn it. He silently gritted his teeth, but he couldn't possibly rush out to save Fang Wan Jie, so he just stayed hidden in his corner like a coward. To his surprise, the horde of monsters, the magma creature in front of him, was the one getting completely shattered. Not only was the archer shocked, but perhaps they were shocked themselves. Facing such a relatively strong opponent, Fang Wan Jie finally felt satisfied. Bring on some more beating. You guys is so satisfying. My death energy is about to be restored to its former glory. After clearing out all the minions, the final boss appeared, surpassing the other monsters in both size and power that Fang Wan Jie had just defeated. He felt the battle lust pumping through his veins. The feeling of facing such powerful monsters was something he hadn't experienced in a long time. However, compared to the high-level demonic beasts he had faced over the past 20 years, this thing was still far too weak. While Fang Wan Jie was busy fighting, the monsters, Kuei and his captain, were still fumbling around trying to find their way. The commotion from Fang Wan Jie's fight was so loud it reached the 2 of them, making them jump in fear. The cave shook violently, and Fang Wan Jie had completed his mission of wiping out the enemies and began to absorb the death energy. The archer hid off to the side, not even daring to breathe loudly. He felt lucky that he hadn't rushed forward to interrogate the kid earlier, otherwise he would be the one lying on the ground right now. This guy pretending to be weak was not someone he could mess with. Boss Jang, forgive me, the revenge for your son's death. I can't do anything about it, he muttered. Unexpectedly, Fang Wan Jie suddenly let out a loud shout, and the archer immediately ducked to hide, but Fang Wan Jie was already rushing in his direction. Just when the man was sure he was done for, the kid directly flew right over his head. Did you think hiding underground would keep you from me? The person Fang Wan Jie had actually detected was Mo Xiaoqin. She was pinned to the ground by Fang Wan Jie, who had her in a chokehold. She wanted to resist but couldn't, and the cloak that concealed her aura was shattered, revealing Mo Xiaoqin's true form as a demonic beast, though a surprisingly pretty one. "Why were you following me? Tell me the truth. One lie, and I'll end you." Fang Wan Jie really didn't know how to be gentle with a lady at all, hitting Mo Xiaoqin so hard, she coughed up blood. She brought up the day he stood in the cemetery and shouted, "Jangun, go to hell," before shooting down his airship. Coincidentally, Mo Xiaoqin was also in the cemetery that day and witnessed the entire event. Another coincidence was that she also shared a mortal enemy in Jangun. The archer was eavesdropping from behind. "Do I need to explain any further?" Fang Wan Jie dusted off his clothes and turned away for the time being, sparing Mo Xiaoqin's life. He said they should act as if they never met today, causing the archer to immediately panic and flee. Fang Wan Jie figured the man wouldn't dare say a word, so he went back to his familiar task, to the astonishment of the demonic beast girl, which was collecting the spirit cores. Meanwhile, Kui and the captain had already made a full loop of the cave. They hadn't encountered a single monster, as they had all been defeated by Fang Wan Jie, but the guy, that clueless oaf, still thought the monsters had been scared away by Kui's killing intent. At that moment, Fang Wan Jie's group also returned. The captain saw them and immediately asked, "Did you run into anything strange?" Fang Wan Jie shook his head vigorously. He was the strangest thing in this entire Monster Hunter dungeon. Could there possibly be anything stranger? Time was up, so they left the dungeon and took out all of today's spirit cores to count them. The number of cores Fang Wan Jie had collected today was enough. The captain was practically blinded by the loot. The words "I'm rich" were written all over his face, so he cheerfully invited Fang Wan Jie for a drink, but he wasn't interested in that kind of thing. After saying his goodbyes, he left right away. That fearless archer watched Fang Wan Jie's back as he left, then picked up his phone to call Boss Jang. "Wire me 3 million. In 1 hour I'll bring you the man who killed your son." Meanwhile, Fang Wan Jie was taking a stroll alone through the miasma forest. He didn't manage to collect much else, so he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. It seems next time, he would have to find a higher-level Monster Hunter dungeon to farm. While Fang Wan Jie was distracted, he took a heavy punch out of nowhere. The blow was so powerful, it sent him flying several yards. Another attack came from behind, and Fang Wan Jie unleashed his deathly aura to counter, but his power was quickly absorbed. There were at least 3 different abilities at play, coming from 3 separate individuals. It seemed their powers all had a similar deathly aura to his own, but they were clearly all aimed at Fang Wan Jie. While he was still reeling in confusion, the users of those abilities slowly stepped out from the woods. Behind them was that same arrogant archer. Your performance back in that cave was truly surprising. That's why I had to invite a few experts to deal with you," he said, knocking an arrow to his bow. "Don't worry, we won't kill you. We're just going to break your damn arms and legs." The moment the words left his mouth, the arrow flew. The archer's arrow tore through the air, but suddenly vanished just a few feet from Fang Wan Jie. Over on the side, one of the 3 mercenaries the archer brought began casting a spell. 3 concentric circles, formed by countless arcane symbols, lit up beneath his feet. Before Fang Wan Jie could even react, the arrow reappeared, but this time it had multiplied into dozens of other arrows, all attacking at once. Fang Wan Jie used his incredible agility to dodge left and right. The archer fired another arrow. This time Fang Wan Jie caught it with his bare hand, but unexpectedly this was exactly what the scoundrel was hoping for. A detonator appeared in his hand. It turned out the arrow was rigged with a flashbang. Fang Wan Jie was nearly blinded by the brilliant flash. When his vision finally cleared, he found himself tightly bound by massive crimson bones. Lasting this long before getting caught, you're pretty impressive. The 4 of them, working together, had caught Fang Wan Jie completely off guard. Seeing him bound tightly, the man in the steel gauntlets stretched his shoulders, as if preparing to land the final blow. The archer saw this and reminded him to leave Fang Wan Jie alive, just to beat him to an inch of his life. These 3 had no personal grudge against Fang Wan Jie, but for the right price, they were taking this fight seriously. Just look at this scoundrel's punch. Both its power and angle were perfectly calculated for a killing blow. After leaving the dungeon, Fang Wan Jie had planned to lay low until he was powerful enough to take down Jangun. But being forced into a corner like this, how could this overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist just sit back and take it? Fang Wan Jie let out a sigh, but what he exhaled was something else entirely. The man with the steel fists immediately collapsed in agony. His left arm, from the elbow down, had been sliced into pieces. At the same time, the bone restraints binding Fang Wan Jie automatically shattered. The woman controlling the bones was instantly horrified. She tried to channel more power to bind him once more. Again, but unfortunately, she was caught by Huang Van Keep. "You dare to show off in front of me with just this pathetic amount of death energy?" She clearly didn't know her place. Fang Wan Jie grabbed both her arms and landed a powerful kick, showing no mercy just because she was a woman. To him, any enemy would be met with overwhelming force. Of the 3 experts hired by that archer, 2 were already down, leaving only the man who specialized in casting spells. Seeing his comrades get taken out, he was still desperately chanting his spell, hoping for a comeback. Fang Wan Jie had lost all patience, directly shutting him up with a punch that knocked out all his front teeth. Only the archer, the mastermind of this ambush, was left standing. Fang Wan Jie turned his head, his gaze ferocious, his eyes filled with pure killing intent. He walked over, slowly grabbed the man's bow and snapped it in half with a single motion. To be clear, according to the bow's owner, it weighed a hefty 400 pounds, yet our overpowered MC, Fang Wan Jie, snapped it as easily as a twig. He then grabbed the archer by the arm, effortlessly hoisting him into the air and demanding, "Who sent you?" Fang Wan Jie's greatest fear was hearing the name Tuang Ton, which would mean his cover was blown. Despite his reluctance to kill humans, if that were the case, he would be forced to silence all 4 of them permanently. But unexpectedly the man said, "Don't you know whose clothes you're wearing? You murdered the boss's son and now you're playing dumb." Fang's expression immediately darkened. While it wasn't Tuang Ton, he couldn't believe that just randomly throwing on some clothes could lead to this much trouble. But whatever, as long as it wasn't Tuang Ton, he was relieved. Everything else could be sorted out. He released his grip, and the archer crumpled to the ground. Fang Wan Jie ordered the man to take him to this so-called boss. Naturally, the archer was in no position to refuse. They got into a luxury car where the driver was addressed by the archer as Manager Liu, one of the boss's trusted confidants. The car drove directly to a sprawling estate, and upon entering the grand hall, Fang Wan Jie saw a grim-faced man already waiting for him. The moment they entered, the archer started sucking up to the boss, saying how impressive it was for him to face such a powerful enemy alone. "Did I say you could talk?" Fang Wan Jie's simple question was more effective than any silencing spell, and the archer immediately shut his mouth. "Hello, boss." Fang Wan Jie decided to speak first. After all, he hadn't actually done anything to the man's son, so he had nothing to fear. "You punk. Do you have any idea why I sent a car for you?" Boss Jang asked, pointing directly at Fang Wan Jie. He then answered his own question. "It's because I hired 5 control-type mages to set up a barrier that nullifies all abilities within this estate. I was afraid if you sensed it, you wouldn't dare to walk in." This was a careless oversight. Fang Wan Jie tried to channel his power, and sure enough, he couldn't use his death energy. The barrier felt incredibly thin, so how could it be this powerful? Fang Wan Jie's eyes darted around before landing on Boss Jang, and then he understood. The chair the boss was sitting on had to be some kind of device used to amplify this suppression barrier. This guaranteed that he couldn't use any of his SSS rank awakening abilities in the boss's vicinity. It seemed his opponent had prepared meticulously for his arrival. Although the flicker of concern on his face was fleeting, the archer still caught it. "Haha, you're done for now." Suddenly, the narrator realized this punk wasn't just weak, he was also a loudmouth. In reality, the reason Boss Jang had set up such a powerful barrier was also because it was his idea. Earlier in the car, Butler Liu kept insisting he shut his mouth, so this archer secretly sent a message with a strategy to control Fang Wan Jie to the boss. By the time they arrived, the barrier was already completely set up. Boss Jang stood up and slowly approached Fang Wan Jie, and judging by his expression, he looked like he could actually crush him. "You better tell me the truth. Who sent you to murder my son?" "Honestly, I have never killed anyone." Fang Wan Jie was about to explain everything, but these people were being completely unreasonable. Laughably so, especially that damn archer, who is an expert at putting words in other people's mouths. Who knows where he got a crossbow? But he charged forward, aiming to break his legs to suck up to Boss Jang, even though he could not summon his death energy. The raw physical power and agility he had honed for the past 20 years were still there. Fang Wan Jie quickly spun around, breaking his opponent's arm before slamming him to the ground. As he beat him, he could not stop cursing the bastard through gritted teeth, as if unleashing all his pent-up frustration. "I have had it with you. You did not even bother to get the facts straight before accusing me. Would it kill you to shut up for 1 second? Would anyone think you are mute, even though the scumbag deserved it?" Boss Jang was not about to let Fang Wan Jie run wild in his manner. The moment he slammed the guy to the ground, his own body was suddenly covered in red dots, the unmistakable sign of sniper lasers. Fang Wan Jie tensed up so much he could not even move. He was completely cornered, but Boss Jang just kept pressing him. "You still have not answered my question. Who gave you the order? Was it Dat from the Black Dragon Society or the Kim brothers from the battlefield? No, you have to listen to me." Boss Jang completely ignored Fang Wan Jie's words and continued to roar. Or was it that old hag from the Hishen gang? Fang Wan Jie was about to lose his mind. These clueless people were just talking to themselves, asking questions, but not even letting him answer. What was the point of asking? No, he screamed, with all his might, I already told you. I just happened to find it. Still making excuses. You have the nerve to wear my son's clothes. Boss Zhang brutally stomped on Fang Wan Jie's head, then ordered the sniper team that they could shoot anywhere except his head. It had been 20 years since Fang Wan Jie had faced such a humiliating situation again. It was like a twisted regression system moment. This feeling of being trampled underfoot was exactly the same as what Jiang Kun did to him 20 years ago. Fang Wan Jie shoved Boss Zhang's leg away and slowly got to his feet. The first bullet hit him, but that also meant the barrier had been pierced. This was the opening Fang Wan Jie needed to turn the tables. With the barrier breached, his death energy was usable again. It was like an SSS rank awakening as Fang Wan Jie's body began to unleash a torrent of death energy which snaked along the laser sights. The energy wrapped around the sniper's rifles. With a powerful roar from Fang Wan Jie, the entire sniper team, hiding on the rooftops, was yanked down by his death energy. However, this overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist had no intention of actually harming them this time. Are you calm enough to listen to me now, old man? This was probably the first time Boss Jang had ever encountered a young man so ferocious and overwhelmingly powerful. They had set up a trap worthy of a monster hunter dungeon with mages and an elite sniper team, yet they still could not do a thing to him. Now, whether he wanted to or not, he had no choice but to calm down. What is it you want to say? Fang Wan Jie took off his jacket, folded it neatly, and held it out to Boss Zhang. If this is a relic of your son, then I wish to return it to its rightful owner. However, this is something I recovered from a hunter's house in the Shuhai Forest. The moment the words Shuhai Forest were spoken, someone nearby suddenly looked up, and it was that troublemaker, Ah Kui. He and the captain were supposed to be out drinking, but somehow he ended up here. Turns out the captain passed out after just 5 minutes of drinking. So Ah Kui went out to pick up some urgent quests for cash, and his mission was to cool down the barrels. For the sniper team, seeing Fang Wan Jie glaring daggers at him, Ah Kui just gave an awkward laugh to brush it off. But that wasn't the main point. The issue was that the wound on his hand that Fang Wan Jie had healed before was also caused by a hunter from the Shuhai Forest. The archer then limped to his feet, as he had just remembered something. Come to think of it, isn't the A-rank master who just joined the Raging Soul Guild also a hunter from the Shuhai Forest? Yes. Ah, Kui nodded repeatedly, then pulled up his shirt to reveal a deep bite mark on his chest. It was that bastard I heard he's even addicted to eating human flesh. This bite mark is from him. Hearing about the cannibalism, Fang Wan Jie suddenly remembered that there was a complete human skeleton in that small cabin. At first he thought it was a discarded anatomical model or a prop for a movie or something, but thinking back now, it was very likely Boss Zhang's son. As soon as he heard this, the old man's eyes turned red, and he immediately ordered Butler Lu to prepare a private jet to the Shuhai Forest. A helicopter quickly flew them to the cabin. The moment they arrived, the archer used his superhuman sensory talent. The scent of this skeleton has degraded a bit, and it's mixed with the foul stench of toxins. However, I can still smell that this scent is a match for the young master old Zhang's son, and the bite marks on the skeleton were a perfect match for the one on Ah Kui's chest. After a moment of consideration, he concluded, these are indeed the remains of Boss Zhang's son. The cause of death was. Before the archer could finish, Boss Zhang was already weeping and clutching the skeleton. Flashing back in time to before his son had his talent awakening, Boss Zhang was just an ordinary man, but a brilliant businessman. Because of this, even though he wasn't an awakened himself, he had more than enough power to make even the best awakeners listen to him. His son knew that if he took over the family business, he would never surpass his father, so he dreamed of becoming an elite, awakened one, to make his father proud. The young master had also heard of a very powerful master, so he set out on his own to seek an apprenticeship. When he left Butler, Lu was very worried and wanted to send people with him, but it was Boss Zhang himself who waved it off, because when he was his son's age, he had already been out making his own way for several years. He thought this was a good chance for his son to get some experience, never expecting it would be the last time the two would see each other. Boss Zhang cradled the skeleton as if he were holding his son when he was a child. If my son is gone, then I swear I will avenge him. Boss Zhang immediately asked for the killer's whereabouts. According to the archer, that person is an officer in the Mountain Division of the Raging Soul Guild. The Mountain Division and the Fire Division are two squads directly under Jiang Kun, All of their members are B-rank awakeners or higher, making them very difficult to deal with. Old Lu, how many can we assemble? Gather everyone here and follow me. Boss Jang gave the order, but Butler Lu was a bit more level-headed, although he was also heartbroken by the young master's death. But realistically, if they were to directly confront a guild, as high level as the Raging Soul, their chances of winning were zero. Moreover, Jiang Kun had recently been engaging in public service activities, everywhere gaining the public's trust. Challenging him now would only cause the Zhang Corporation to face social criticism. Their entire business model was built on reputation, so if the public turned against them, it would be incredibly difficult to continue growing. Even so, if Boss Jang insisted on fighting to the bitter end, Butler Lu wouldn't dare to disobey his orders. But after listening to Old Lu's analysis, Old Zhang also felt that he shouldn't declare war just yet. He carried his son's remains out, tears still streaming down his face. Give your father a little time. I will make sure your killer pays with their life. Watching Boss Zhang's retreating figure, Akui felt something was off. The poison that killed the young master was likely C-rank, because his bones were still intact, but last time, during the fight, the poison from that bastard monster hunter had only grazed Akui's ice armor, and the pain was so intense, he could barely breathe. If that guy's power had progressed between the time he killed the young master and when he attacked Akui, then that improvement was happening at a godlike speed, almost like an SSS rank awakening. Before leaving, Fang Wan Jie noticed something else. The A rank mana core he had left behind was now gone. Fang Wan Jie boarded the plane, and at that moment, Boss Jang, despite his embarrassment, had to speak up and apologize to him. Young man, we had a little misunderstanding earlier. I was desperate to find my son and made a hasty judgment. I hope you can understand. I always repay my debts, whether of kindness or enmity, so just name your price, and I will give you anything you want. Fang Wan Jie didn't want to make things difficult for him. He only asked for a new cloak that could conceal his face. That very night, wearing the face-concealing cloak, Fang Wan Jie went to Shanzi Hall, and the guards who tried to stop him all lost their heads. The gilded sign, reading Shanzi Hall, Raging Soul, was also sliced in two by his blade. Fang Wan Jie casually strolled in as if he owned the place. The group of awakened ones gathered there saw that he was just a young kid, and decided to use their numbers to overwhelm him. But who could have guessed that this overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist Fang Wan Jie could handle nearly a dozen of them with just a single sword? He spared only one man, ordering him to call out the new hunter from Shuhai. The coward immediately agreed, but as he turned to leave, he was sliced in two. Fang Wan Jie hadn't moved a muscle. The one who struck was the very man he was looking for. No need for him to call your daddies here. He didn't show up alone, bringing two others with him, both high-ranking executives from Shanzi Hall. Looking at the appearance of this hunter from Shuhai, Fang Wan Jie was filled with disgust. He could tell at a glance that this bastard lacked the innate power and had forcibly absorbed monocores, which led to a phenomenon of atavism, a risk for any wannabe who hunts in a monster hunter dungeon. So, his addiction to cannibalism wasn't all that surprising. Fang Wan Jie loudly said to the two attachments, "I'm not here for you two, so scram if you know what's good for you." Such an arrogant tone. Was lucky not to have sent his opponents into a rage, let alone convince them to leave. As high-ranking executives, how could they possibly stand by after watching Fang Wan Jie single-handedly slaughter a dozen of their B-rank awakened ones? Even the guy with the white-haired guy even made a proposition that the three of them would carve up Fang Wan Jie into 3 parts and compete to see whose piece was bigger. The wager was a B-rank spirit core. This attitude of theirs greatly pleased Fang Wan Jie, as his earlier words were actually just a taunt. He had been worried they would run away, leaving him with no one to replenish his magnetic energy from. Seeing Fang Wan Jie standing silent and still, the three of them took the initiative and attacked. His magnetic energy surged forth relentlessly, instantly knocking back the 2 lackeys of that Shuhai hunter. "He's got some real power. You almost gave me a heart attack," the white-haired guy said. "Let's stop toying with him and fight for real," the guy in the hat added. Fang Wan Jie found this utterly ridiculous. What did they mean by get serious? Did they really think they had a chance to? He casually raised his hand, gathering a small amount of magnetic energy. He then gestured for his opponents to look down at their feet. The instant their eyes dropped was the exact moment they were impaled by countless spikes that shot up from the ground. A classic move for an overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist. Seeing things go south, Fang Wan Jie despised people like this the most, those with limited power but an infinite supply of dirty tricks. He charged straight at him. He intended to teach the scoundrel a lesson, but the guy didn't just stand there and take the hit. His hands had been buried in his thick coat. Now, his left arm was exposed, and it was utterly grotesque. That was definitely not a normal human arm. It looked more like some kind of poison-spraying nozzle. Fang Wan Jie was already charging forward with momentum, and couldn't stop in time. As a result, he took the full force of the poison spray. However, things didn't go according to the hunter's plan. In a true *** reincarnation power fantasy, *** twist, not only was Fang Wan Jie unharmed by the poison, but he actually opened his mouth and inhaled it all. Then, talk about a taste of his own medicine. While his opponent was blinded by the poison, Fang Wan Jie viciously grabbed him by the head. "You worthless piece of trash," he sneered. "You son of a b-times, don't you dare look down on me." The hunter roared, and in his rage, his entire appearance transformed. His head became that of a snake, and his limbs morphed into something unrecognizable. This grotesque devolution into a monster, typical of what you'd find in a *** Monster Hunter dungeon ***, was truly repulsive. But before he could even make a move, he was impaled by Fang Wan Jie's sword. "Let me teach you a lesson. If you don't have the talent, don't try to absorb a spirit core that's beyond your rank." Fang Wan Jie yanked his sword out of the man's body, and followed up with another decisive slash. The scoundrel collapsed instantly, with no hope of survival left. Fang Wan Jie was originally planning to leave right then, but another figure appeared. "Oh, thanks for taking care of that for me." Brother Kun insisted on making this drooling hick an executive. I was racking my brain, trying to figure out how to dispose of him without getting on Brother Kun's bad side. Fang Wan Jie recognized this scumbag. He was one of the two lackeys with Jangun on the day he was kicked off a cliff, a memory seared into his mind, thanks to his *** regression system, ***. But his opponent apparently didn't recognize him. He even nonchalantly invited Fang Wan Jie to join their guild, offering to waive the interview process. Fang Wan Jie's anger, which had just cooled slightly, erupted once more with a vengeance. He was blinded by fury. He immediately lunged forward to attack. But unlike the other small fry, this scoundrel wasn't an easy target for Fang Wan Jie. In fact, he even managed to land a counterattack. His jacket immediately burst into flames. It seemed this guy had a fire elemental talent, a power that could lead to an ***, rank awakening, ***. His strikes were so fast. Even though the opponent didn't recognize Fang Wan Jie, he was still very intrigued by his power. Because the three guys he just defeated were all A-rank awakened, a feat that would place him among the top 200 A-rankers. Too bad he picked the wrong opponent. The guy's speed was like a flash of light, sending Fang Wan Jie flying with a single punch. Even though he blocked the attack, his collar was still scorched. Just how insanely powerful was this guy's ability? It felt like a true SSS rank awakening. Seeing Fang Wan Jie stunned, his opponent taunted him. "Are you trying to analyze my talent? Do you even have a brain? How could a half-baked amateur like you possibly see through my combat abilities?" As his opponent charged again, Fang Wan Jie ripped a paving stone from the ground with his bare hands and hurled it at him, but of course this couldn't deal any real damage. Of course, Fang Wan Jie knew that, so the brick was just a smokescreen. His real attack, a classic move for an overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist, followed right after. The moment his opponent shattered the brick, our MC's blade was already upon him. He was caught off guard, dropping the golden shortsword in his hand to the ground. The blinding flame immediately died down, and Fang Wan Jie suddenly realized the guy was just bluffing. He didn't actually possess a fire-type ability at all. Now that he was disarmed, Fang Wan Jie didn't mind going hand-to-hand. He used his death aura to enhance his muscle strength, then unleashed a flurry of punches. The opponent could only block and block again. The tables had seemingly turned, and now Fang Wan Jie was the one with the upper hand. "Why aren't you using your fire anymore? Is my fast attack making it hard for you to concentrate, so you can't use your mind to accelerate the movement of electrons?" The bastard was completely shocked that Fang Wan Jie had seen through him. He couldn't understand how he was figured out after just a few exchanges. Seeing the panic in his opponent's eyes, Fang Wan Jie sped up his attacks even more. His insight was almost like he had a regression system, telling him what to look for. Back then, his jacket was set on fire by the opponent's fist, but it started from the thick stainless steel zipper. The second time he was set on fire, his much thinner t-shirt underneath was only slightly. So when he incinerated that brick, our MC discovered the problem. That zipper contained iron, copper, and nickel. These metallic elements have more free electrons, so they heat up faster. He only has the ability to increase the speed of free electrons, not to generate fire himself. To confirm that, guess he tried attacking with the Nether Soul Sword, and, just as predicted, his opponent couldn't burn his sword because it's made of ethereal death, aura containing no elements at all, let alone electrons to heat. Said I had no brain. Even though you hid your ability so carefully, I still found it out. An ability like this guy's, which relies on mental power, is very easy to neutralize. You just need to mess with his thoughts so he can't focus on activating his talent. Just like now, Fang Wan Jie is attacking relentlessly, and his opponent has to constantly defend. How could he possibly be in the mood to focus his mind on heating up electrons? In the end, this spiky-haired punk was sent flying by his punch. The blow was so strong that it caused a part of the Shanzi hall to collapse. It seems the opponent was completely enraged. He struggled to his feet, his eyes filled with killing intent. According to the usual plot of a reincarnation, power fantasy, getting angry will definitely unleash even more terrifying power. Don't be too careful. The opponent's body began to emit a terrifying aura, and the ground beneath his feet started to crack. It seems he's about to go all out. This is where the real fight begins, a true clash between two powerful individuals. Fang Wan Jie braced himself, knowing that the next exchange would be on a completely different level. The air crackled with energy as the two faced off, ready for the final showdown. He boasted that by unleashing his full SSS rank awakening, he could accelerate not just basic particles like electrons, but nearly 100 common atoms and molecules. As expected, having been cornered by Fang Wan Jie, this guy had unleashed his full potential. He wanted to form a field of super high temperature around himself, enough to burn Fang Wan Jie to a crisp. Even though it was nighttime, the flames surrounding him made the sky brighter than day. But he was all flash and no substance, and he hadn't even managed to attack before Fang Wan Jie severed one of his arms. It was impossible to see how our overpowered MC passed through the surrounding wall of fire and landed the blow, but the severed arm was undeniable proof. It didn't stop there, as Fang Wan Jie continued with a relentless barrage of slashes, and both of the bastard's arms and legs were severed. By the time our hero emerged arrogantly from the flames, his opponent finally understood why. The death aura armor had protected Fang Wan Jie, allowing him to pass through the curtain of fire without taking any damage at all. Death aura belongs to the void, so naturally it's unaffected by any element. It was just this fool, who was too brainless to understand, only knowing how to blindly unleash his full power. In the end, he still had to suffer this utter humiliation. In his moment of absolute desperation, he finally begged for his life, but Fang Wan Jie was having none of it. Sending him to the afterlife was a key part of his revenge plot. Before delivering the final blow, Fang Wan Jie even made a promise. "Don't worry, I'll send Jangun down to keep you company very soon." From this angle, the man finally recognized Fang Wan Jie. He hastily brought up the name Su Qin Yu, as if it were a get-out-of-death-free card. However, the sword was already descending. Fang Wan Jie tried to pull back, but it was too late. The cold steel mercilessly pierced his opponent's chest. He frantically tried to lift the man, but his body was as limp as a noodle, unable to give him any information about Su Qin Yu. Thinking the man was dead, Fang Wan Jie left in frustration, but he never expected that after he was gone, the bastard actually cracked a smug grin, because he possessed the ability to control elements and cells just moments earlier. When Fang Wan Jie's sword struck, he had managed to separate the particles of his heart in time. Since the blade missed its vital target, he was able to cling to a sliver of life. All he needed now was time. Although it would take a while, his heart and limbs could reattach themselves. Too bad for him, that perfect scenario was not meant to be, as a pitch-black hole appeared in the sky. This too was the work of the death aura generated by Fang Wan Jie. The bastard, along with the bodies of the other awakeners and the entire Shanzi hall, were all sucked inside. Fang Wan Jie had originally wanted to keep a low profile, but this time, to prevent any future trouble, he had no choice but to erase all traces, leaving nothing but a desolate wasteland behind. Fang Wan Jie made a swift exit, but this incident was still witnessed by someone else. Fortunately, it was just Mo Xiaoqin. She clicked her tongue, so reckless. Does this guy even think before acting? Meanwhile, that night, Jangun had a strange dream. He dreamed of 20 years ago, when he first faced a level 3 monster in a monster hunter dungeon. Despite his two subordinates trying their best to stop him, with his ego on the line, he insisted on charging into the lopsided battle. He never expected the creature to have the ability to hypnotize even awakeners. Jangun fell into an illusion created by the monster. The outcome was predictable. Jangun was captured. At the very moment he was about to be devoured by the beast, a savior appeared. It was an angel, well, one who was dressed a little on the skimpy side. Her entire body was loosely wrapped in a single white silk ribbon. It seems she was the one who granted Fang Wan Jie his SSS rank awakening. All he knew was that Jangun was saved by this person, even though he thought he had already gone to heaven. But the truth was, he was still alive. Thinking back, it was laughable, committing all sorts of evil deeds, yet still dreaming of going to heaven. The dream ended there. Kun was awakened by his phone, surrounded by a group of beauties who could have been human or beast, but if they were demonic beasts, for real, then this guy's taste is really something else. Jangun received a notification that both the Shanzi Hall and his close subordinates, along with over a dozen A-rank awakeners, had disappeared. He then told his subordinate to arrange a press conference to address the media. When he arrived, he didn't forget to put on a righteous act for the parents of the subordinate Fang Wan Jie dealt with last night. Of course, the so-called explanation to the press was just the usual lines. The reason for the devastating attack on Shanzi Hall is still under investigation. The Violent Soul Guild believes the truth will soon be revealed. Compared to the losses that the guild has suffered, what saddens me more is losing so many comrades who have been through thick and thin with me in just one night. This bastard is truly a good actor. He had just reached this part of his speech, and tears were already streaming down his face. He didn't intend to miss this opportunity to gain some public favor, so he decided to turn the ruins of Shanzi Hall into the Shanzi Welfare Institute and also established a fund of the same name to ensure that every family member of the victims would receive a generous subsidy. However, the parents of the awakeners who died last night didn't need the money that much. What they needed was to bring the culprit who murdered their children to justice. Jangun put on a complex expression, one of both pain and determination. He swore to make the culprit pay a heavy price. At this moment, Boss Jang and Butler Lu were also watching the press conference live. They couldn't deny that Jangun was very good at winning over the media. Clear lie, the Violent Soul Guild's position was shaken, but after this tragedy, they had regained the absolute affection of the public. Old Lu, who do you think did this? Boss Zhang only asked casually, but Butler Lu had already shrewdly guessed what he needed. I understand, I'll bring Fang Wan Jie here. However, when Butler Lu went to find Fang Wan Jie, the boy adamantly refused to return to the manor, even though the butler talked until he was blue in the face, saying that Boss Jang only had good intentions and wanted to repay him for avenging his son, but Fang Wan Jie still flatly refused. Besides the posture in which the two were discussing this important matter was also very strange. Last night, Fang Wan Jie had secretly punched a hole in a railway bridge overpass to shelter from the elements, so Butler Lu was currently hovering in midair just to be able to talk to this guy. In the end, faced with Butler Lu's sincerity, Fang Wan Jie agreed to get in the car. After hearing him talk, he learned that ever since escaping that monster hunter dungeon, Fang Wan Jie had been living a nomadic life, even though he also had his old house, but just returning there made him want to cry. The car sped smoothly towards the vast manor, and Butler Lu then took Fang Wan Jie to see Boss Jang right away. The boss had already prepared a pot of fine tea for him, and Fang Wan Jie didn't stand on ceremony, sitting down and taking a sip. After the tea cooled down a bit, old Jang finally spoke up. You went a little too far this time. How did you know it was me? Fang Wan Jie retorted. Yesterday when I was screaming about wanting revenge, I could feel your menacing glare, and as a result, the Shanzi Guild vanished overnight. A huge incident like that, yet there was no news about it. Who else in this city possesses that kind of power but you? Fang Wan Jie didn't deny that he was responsible for what happened that night, but he had to make it clear to Boss Jang that he didn't do it entirely for him and his son, but because of a personal grudge. Boss Jang poured him more tea and offered some advice, speaking to him as an elder. He knew Fang Wan Jie held a deep grudge against Jangun, but that scoundrel was currently very popular among the people. If he were to fight him, Fang Wan Jie would be painted as the villain, and once his identity was exposed, he'd become a public enemy of the entire society. Fang Wan Jie immediately became wary from the way Boss Zhang spoke. It was clear he had been thoroughly investigated. Old Zhang noticed the killing intent in Fang Wan Jie's eyes, but remained perfectly calm. You're incredibly powerful, able to single-handedly take down several S-rank awakeners, but what about hundreds of A-rankers? What if another S-rank, or even someone with an SSS rank awakening steps in? What would you do then? The people in this society are far more difficult to handle than the beasts in a monster hunter dungeon. Boss Zhang's words weren't wrong, but the more Fang Wan Jie listened, the more irritated he grew. Did you call me here just to tell me to give up on my revenge? Of course you have to get revenge. Who said you shouldn't? Damn it, you absolutely must get that revenge for me. Old Zhang wasn't telling Fang Wan Jie to abandon his quest for vengeance, but he believed that to execute this plan properly, he needed three things: a strategy, allies, and money. It's not like he has a regression system to give him a do-over. Coincidentally, Boss Jang was someone who had plenty of experience with all three. Although he didn't say it outright, Fang Wan Jie understood he was offering to partner up with him. Ever since escaping that hellish dungeon, Fang Wan Jie had been blinded by hatred. The things old Zhang just mentioned were actually quite simple, yet he had never considered them. Seeing Fang Wan Jie's silence, old Zhang took it as a sign that he had agreed, but before they could make any long-term plans, one thing needed to be addressed first. Fang Wan Jie hadn't bathed in days, and now, the stench coming off him was like a walking corpse. Old Zhang ordered his men to take him for a bath, and even had them specially prepare his late son's room for Fang Wan Jie to stay in, and our overpowered MC didn't object, obediently following them. After Fang Wan Jie left for his bath, Butler Lu finally dared to voice his concerns. He had been with old Zhang for a long time, and knew that his master hated taking risks more than anything, yet now he wanted to team up with Fang Wan Jie to take down the Berserk Guild. This was clearly a gamble with incredibly high stakes. But in truth, old Zhang didn't just want revenge, he had ambitions of taking over the massive guild himself. For himself. Old Lu, don't you think this kid bears a striking resemblance to my son? Caught off guard, Butler Lu began to ponder the question. Indeed, Fang Wan Jie and the late young master did share some facial similarities. Perhaps his lingering grief for his son was another reason Boss Jang wanted to help, almost like a reincarnation power fantasy playing out before his eyes. Meanwhile, Fang Wan Jie had been led to the bathroom by a servant. It had been ages since he'd even smelled soap, but before Fang Wan Jie could even turn on the water, he heard a girl's voice from outside the door. "I'll just bathe down here. I'm too lazy to go upstairs." After that, the bathroom door was pushed open, and a girl entered with her maid. The moment the girl caught a glimpse of Fang Wan Jie, her eyes welled up with tears, and ignoring his state of undress, she rushed forward and threw her arms around him. "So you're still alive." Van Kiep was in an awkward spot. Men and women shouldn't be so close, and besides, his heart only belonged to Su Qinyu. But it seemed this girl was mistaking him for young Master Zhang. Seeing her crying so hard, Van Kiep couldn't bring himself to push her away. "Young miss, please put on your glasses." The maid beside her quickly placed a pair of glasses on the girl, who turned out to be the real daughter of Boss Jang, the young Miss Zhang. Only then did she get a clear look at Van Kiep's face, and her first reaction was to cover her chest with both hands. Then she ran outside screaming, "Dad, there's a pervert in the house." Van Kiep was speechless. She was the one who jumped on him. The maid was about to run after young Miss Zhang, but was grabbed by Van Kiep. "Wait for me outside in a bit." He washed off the dirt and grime, feeling completely reborn, like a classic reincarnation power fantasy protagonist. After he came out, the maid was indeed waiting for him. Van Kiep didn't get it. If she had such an incredible disguise skill, why not just directly infiltrate the soul frenzy and assassinate Jiang Kun? That's right, this maid was actually Mo Xiaoqin in disguise. Although her transformation skill was excellent, Van Kiep could clearly sense her aura. Mo Xiaoqin had of course considered his idea, but Jiang Kun was incredibly paranoid. Anyone who got close to him had to go through multiple strict checks, so Mo Xiaoqin had never found an opportunity. "So, what's your plan now?" Van Kiep asked. "I'll stay under the protection of Boss Jang and wait for the right moment to act." After saying that, she transformed back into the maid and returned to avoid arousing suspicion by being gone too long from young Miss Zhang. Van Kiep went back to his room and received a new coat from Boss Jang. Both of them seemed embarrassed about the earlier case of mistaken identity. Van Kiep tried on the coat, but felt it wasn't very comfortable. He suggested swapping it for some black coats, but Boss Jang yelled in his face, "My son loved to wear black when he was alive. Do you want my daughter to mistake you for him again?" For some reason, Van Kiep suddenly felt a fear of Boss Jang, like he was his own father. Luckily, Butler Lu arrived just in time to save the day, bringing with him the latest intel. The Shanzi Hall charity, recently founded by Jiang Kun, was indeed shady. On the list of donors was a man named Situ Da, who was the same Da from the Black Dragon Society, that during his first meeting with Van Kiep, Boss Zhang had mentioned his displeasure with Situ Da's collusion with Soul Frenzy. Boss Zhang then dragged Van Kiep into the car, and they headed to the Black Dragon Society together. At the Black Dragon Society, a group of thugs were sitting around, playing mahjong. Butler Lu drove the car right through the wall, sending their mahjong table flying. The Plotic servant, biggest of the four thugs, immediately charged forward aggressively. "You dare to barge into the Black Dragon Society like this? You must have a death wish." But no matter how big he was sent flying by a single punch from Van Kiep. The remaining fodder saw this, and immediately ganged up on him, but they all met the same fate, getting absolutely demolished by Van Kiep in a classic, overpowered MC Manhwa beatdown. In the end, it was Boss Zhang who had to step in. Stop, Don't treat them like you're clearing a monster hunter dungeon. If someone actually dies, it'll be hard for me to talk to, Ada. A crowd from the Black Dragon Society hearing the commotion rushed out, but Boss Jang only dared to send Butler Lu to deal with them. If he let Von Kiep handle it, he was afraid there would be, turning the Black Dragon Society into a mass grave. Turns out Butler Lu is also an awakened, and a powerful one at that. With considerable power, he took a few steps forward, and numerous concentric rings of smoke appeared around him. Very few members of the Black Dragon Society knew how terrifying Butler Lu was, but that didn't mean no one did. Hey, watch out. He's using his unique innate ability Smoke Envoy. He's not easy to deal with, a scar-faced woman shouted. But no one answered her, as they had all been caught by Butler Lu's attack. His skill activated surrounding his opponents, in a thick hazy smoke, then suddenly trapped them inside hollow walls which were filled entirely with razor-sharp iron spikes. Once trapped, these spikes would pierce their flesh from head to toe. Although they might survive, the pain was absolutely unbearable. Hello, we're here to see Boss Da. Butler Lu, after making quick work of about 20 men, remained perfectly calm. Inside the room, no one dared to resist him anymore. The three of them entered the inner room. It seemed Situ Da was on his last legs as he had to rely on an oxygen tank to live, along with medicine and constant IV drips. Even now, his arm was hooked up to several IV lines. The moment Old Man Zhang entered the room, he started with the taunts. He sarcastically called Situ Da a righteous man for displaying a statue of Guan Yin in his room. Then, Old Man Zhang picked up a burning candle next to the statue and tilted it, letting hot wax drip onto Situ Da's forehead. You son of a... You have money to donate to Jiang, but not enough to pay me back. Although Situ Da was furious, he was in a weak position. He was the debtor, so he couldn't talk back, let alone fight back against Old Man Zhang, and could only endure the humiliation while peeling the wax off his forehead. Situ Da made a living by smuggling spirit cores, the kind you'd find in a monster hunter dungeon, a fact Boss Jang was well aware of. He said that the money he donated to Jiang charity was just to launder his own money. After donating, he even had to borrow more money from Jiang. The salaries for over 100 brothers in the Black Dragon Society, plus the money for over 20 mouths to feed in his own family, all came from that loan. Boss Jang, if it wasn't to make a living, I wouldn't have caused so much trouble. Our guilds didn't sign that truce agreement easily. Who wouldn't want to just make money in peace? Old Man Zhang was a businessman but also a gang boss, so of course he wouldn't be moved by these words from Situ Da. He didn't come today just to collect a debt. Boss Zhang was willing to extend the time for Situ Da to pay the interest, but in return, he had to tell him what Jiang was really up to. Seeing Situ Da hesitate, Old Man Zhang signaled to Butler Lu. He immediately understood and kicked Situ Da's oxygen tank, breaking it. The man frantically pulled the oxygen tube from his nose and reached for an emergency oxygen canister to replace it, but Old Man Zhang was faster and snatched it away. Are you going to talk or not? Situ Da was struggling to breathe and couldn't fight a losing battle anymore, so he painstakingly confessed. I just helped him buy some children from the mountainous region's kids with the potential for an SSS rank awakening. Then I arranged for them to attend the school that he sponsors. At first, I thought it was to cultivate a reserve force for the Berserk Soul Guild, but later he also started accepting even normal children with no innate abilities. Situ Da said it all in one breath, then quickly snatched the oxygen canister from Old Man Zhang's hand and gasped for air. A moment later, his breathing finally stabilized. He was just a hair's breadth away from kicking the bucket, claiming that's all he knew and he wasn't involved in anything else. Old Zhang tentatively believed him, and they prepared to leave. Before leaving, he didn't forget to threaten Situ Da, warning him not to blab about their visit today or else Old Zhang would expose all the good deeds Situ Da had ever done, and then they'd see who Jiang would come after. The intimidation part was over and Old Zhang turned and left without another word. After this, Fang Wan Jie had to truly acknowledge Old Zhang's capabilities. Even though he wasn't an awakened, he still had enough power to shake up this world. It seemed that partnering with Boss Jang was the right move. Now in this second chance that felt like a reincarnation power fantasy, all he had to do was wait for Jiang to show a weakness and strike. That night, Fang Wan Jie went drinking alone. He had quit drinking a long time ago, ever since he officially fell in love with Su Jin Yu, and only now that she was gone from this world, and he had finally escaped that brutal monster hunter dungeon, did Fang Wan Jie even consider drinking his sorrows away. But before he could drown his sorrows, trouble came knocking. The screen started broadcasting images from a charity banquet, hosted by the Raging Soul Guild. Jiang Kun's face appeared, which was an absolute eyesore for Fang Wan Jie, but he couldn't deny that this guy had some skills becoming the final boss in what was shaping up to be an overpowered MC Manhwa. Back when he pushed him off the cliff, Jangun was just a minor team leader in a no-name guild. In the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed, and he had become the guild master of the largest guild in the city. Truly, the kind of character who could blot out the sky with one hand. It seems a lot has happened in these 20 years, and he needed to investigate, slowly. Just as he put his glass down, Fang Wan Jie felt something warm splash onto his head. Son of a... It was vomit, and to make it worse, it was from that team captain from before. What kind of twisted fate was this? He had just gotten clean after 20 years only to get puked on. It turned out Awakens and the captain were out drinking today. But this guy, despite his large build, was a real lightweight, turning into this mess after just one large mug of beer. Cui pulled a few spirit cores from the captain's pocket, then turned to Fang Wan Jie with a grin, saying he didn't expect to see him here and that this drink was on him. Two guys who were at each other's throats like cats and dogs before were now sitting and drinking together. But it was thanks to this strange twist of fate that Fang Wan Jie managed to dig up some more information about Jangun. According to Awakens, Jangun achieved his current status because of a legendary battle 10 years ago that made his name. Hearing this, Fang Wan Jie suddenly fell into deep thought. What was he doing 10 years ago? He remembered he was taking the tongue of a shark and mixing it with a bunch of miscellaneous B-rank monster meat to create an unprecedented hamburger. He had been living a miserable life in that dungeon for so long, while Jangun was out here, becoming famous in a single battle, living a life of luxury and happiness. Meanwhile, Awakens also fell silent. 10 years ago, he too was going through the toughest period of his life. His master was hospitalized, seemingly on the verge of death at any moment. Yet at that very time, the regression system sent out a warning to all players called the City Wall Guard. It was a call to arms for all, awakened of B rank and above, to gather at the East Sea and fight against foreign invaders together. However, this mission had an extremely high mortality rate. Awakens, at the time, had just passed his C rank exam and didn't want to go, but his master insisted on going. The previous City Wall Guard mission was launched 37 years ago, a legendary event where an SSS rank awakening was rumored to have occurred, and back then, Awakens' master had gotten scared and ran away. As a result, his parents and 4 older sisters all died on missions, leaving him to live a lonely life. Now, at his age, when the call for the Great Wall defense sounded again, he felt this was the last thing he needed to do in his life. Awakens' master rummaged through his nightstand and pulled out a magic staff. He recognized it as the strongest ice element staff, made from the trunk of the Winter King tree. His master was dead serious, so his curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to follow. The master and disciple duo gathered with many other awakened on the East Sea coast. Awakens was young then and thrilled to see so many top-tier hunters. He spotted the legendary Fam Thien of Prison City, the S-rank genius who could kill people just by standing still, and Lushibat of Jiahak City, who passed the S-rank awakened test using only pure physical combat. Haha, are you making a fuss over S-ranks like they're a new thing? Awakens, he saw his master giving him a look like he was some country bumpkin. Following his master's finger, he saw 2 other major figures. That was Trong Dao Hai, the vice guild master of the nation's Chonghu guild. Besides the guild master, she was the only one to have reached the pinnacle of her craft. There was also a man named Doc C, a genius among geniuses, with an IQ of 390. He just acted so rarely, he hadn't officially reached that master standard. This Doc Sai turned out to be an old acquaintance of Awakens' master, and greeted him first upon seeing him. Even old man Ha is here. I'm just taking my little disciple out to see the world a bit. Awakens was caught in the crossfire. After his master's simple introduction, Trong Dao Hai got right in his face. You little punk, looking at your weak limbs, you probably haven't even reached B rank right. The Great Wall defense is a war, not a daycare. Be careful, or you'll lose your life. Awakens was so angry his ears burned, even though it was true he hadn't reached B rank yet. But being called a little punk on their first meeting was just too rude. Seeing how serious Trong Dao Hai was, Old Man Ha had to step in and speak up for Awakens, saying he'd have the boy stand aside and observe once the mission started. Unexpectedly, Awakens' youthful hot-headedness was provoked by Trong Dao Hai's words, and he shouted, "I'm not afraid. The Great Wall defense means there are invaders, right? I have to join everyone and drive them all out." Doc Sai chuckled. This man's attitude was much more pleasant than the woman's. He just reminded Awakens not to be reckless and to run immediately if things looked bad. The group of them all looked out towards the ocean. The situation wasn't good. A strange mass weighing over 2 million tons was suddenly entering the 100 nautical mile range of the East Sea coast. However, radar couldn't detect this strange mass, probably because a barrier had been set up around it. The first Awakened who discovered it didn't dare act rashly. They could only activate the Great Wall defense to gather as much combat power as possible before that 2 million ton object reached. What in the world weighs 2 million tons? Athoy peered into the distance, feeling completely lost, while Doxy theorized it was an aircraft carrier used for naval warfare. Hearing this, Old Man Ha's face went pale. Who sent 2 aircraft carriers here? Whoever sent the guildmaster to the UN meeting is the one planning to ambush us. If what Doxy said was true, then the mastermind behind this plan is the Tengta nation, but he also believed that the Tengta clan wouldn't get their own hands dirty. Just as he said that, something massive slammed into the protective barrier, shattering it instantly. 2 colossal warships appeared, along with countless smaller cruisers. Based on the flag hanging from the mothership, the Poison Master immediately knew his suspicions were correct. This was a plot by those hunting dogs backed by the Tengta nation. However, right now, who the mastermind was didn't matter as much as how to sink that mothership. On the other side, the enemies on the mothership also knew they had been discovered. A surprise attack was no longer possible, so they could only engage in a direct confrontation. However, facing off against countless powerful individuals in the world of the Awakened, like that, the odds weren't exactly in their favor. The general standing at the warship's bow now had a fierce look of determination. For this mission, their side had 2 motherships, accompanied by top-tier warships and the prodigies of the Lido nation, a country whose economy was on the brink of collapse. Launching this war was also about carrying the hopes of their people who wanted to rebuild the country, so for them failure this time would be even more terrifying than death itself. It wasn't just the warships, countless fighter jets were also launched, but on the other side, the Awakened suddenly erected a towering wall of ice. Because the jets were moving too fast and the distance was too short, they couldn't brake in time, and many planes crashed into the ice wall and plummeted down. This ice wall was single-handedly erected by Old Ha, with the support of Kui. Just a second ago, he was still feeling terrified, but seeing the enemy fighter jets fall like flies, he suddenly felt a surge of hope. That's right, they could fight back against the enemy. And at that moment, a large, heavy-set man, in armor, walked up to the general. They still dare to resist. What an arrogant bunch. After saying that, he turned around and lifted a giant artillery shell with his bare hands, then hurled it straight at the ice wall. The moment the shell collided with the wall, it exploded instantly, causing the structure to collapse. Kui began to pour more mana into his magic staff, wanting to recreate the ice wall, but his master ordered him to fall back. He alone, holding his magic staff, stood before the sea as immense power surged forth and the entire vast coastline began to freeze over. This was the terrifying power of the skill Eternal Ice Breath. A huge stretch of the sea had been frozen into a thick, solid layer of ice. Their warships were trapped, as a result, many frozen solid on the spot. The terrifying thing was, this was magic that ignored innate talents. Even someone with an S-rank talent would freeze to death all the same. On their side, there was an On-Myoji who had opened a neutralizing circle, allowing those who stepped inside to temporarily escape the bone-chilling cold. The general leading the fleet also had the lower half of his body frozen, just an A-rank area of effect spell. And you think you can stop us? How childish. The moment he moved his leg, the ice shattered. Then on the other side, the Poison Master didn't dare to delay and waste Old Ha's efforts. Through his earpiece, he immediately gave the order to deploy the final finishing move. The sky, which had been dark but clear, suddenly became stormy and ominous. Then the clouds swirled together to form an opening for light to pass through, positioned directly above the mothership where the general was standing. The Poison Master shouted loudly, "Heaven's cry." At that very moment, from the opening in the sky, a terrifying beam of power struck down instantly, snapping. A flagship was taken down, the point of impact hitting the ship's ammunition depot. As expected, a terrifying explosion erupted immediately after. Occurred. Elder Ha was now breathless with exhaustion. His eternal ice breath could no longer be maintained because the activator was overloaded, so Thiencap was temporarily unable to launch a second attack. Athoy witnessed this explosion with his own eyes, and an unprecedented feeling of exhilaration surged through his veins, but just a few seconds later, that excitement was replaced by dread, because after the explosion, many enemies had slipped through the net and were leaving the warship to come ashore. It seemed the Lie Down Nation had gone all out, and now the truly grueling showdown was beginning. Trong Daohai felt incredibly tense. She ordered her subordinate, Shik Hao, to use his innate talent to assess the power levels of the awakened on both sides, but the situation was far from optimistic. Shik Hao discovered that the Li Dao nation's lineup included one person who had reached the level of Master Level 8 S rankers, 197 A rankers, and 412 B rankers. Meanwhile, their side only had one Master Level individual 5 S rankers, 26 A rankers, and 89 B rankers. There was also one C ranker, A Thoi himself. Hearing, mocking, laughter erupt, A Thoi's pride was deeply wounded. So what if I'm C rank? I might be C rank, but I'm a mage. The moment he said that, he charged forward. Elder Ha tried to stop him but was too late, wondering where A Thoi got the courage to face several hundred members of the Li Dao nation. He raised the magic staff in his hand, wanting to be like his master, and use versatile magic to overcome the difference. In rank and overwhelm his opponents, he had only one thought in his mind: to annihilate all the awakened from the Li Dao nation, so no one would ever look down on him again. He activated his skill, Funeral Ice Blade Dance, looking just like a madman. On the other side, the enemy general dispatched a sumo wrestler named Hoan Kwong to deal with him. Unsurprisingly, A Thoi got completely wrecked. He couldn't even block his opponent's first move, and was sent flying backward. The Poison Master had already predicted this would happen, so he didn't intervene, letting A Thoi experience it for himself. Hoan Kwong's kick was so powerful that it sent A Thoi flying straight into a distant cliff face. The moment his body slammed into the rock, every bone in his body felt like it was shattering. A Thoi couldn't hold it in any longer, and burst into tears. It turned out that all this time, whenever they sparred, his master had always been holding back on him. He finally realized how terrifying the power of A rank and S rank awakened truly was on a real battlefield. A Thoi had assumed his opponent was at least an A rank, but in reality, Hoan Kwong was merely a B rank awakened. This sumo wrestler was also an arrogant fool, and after taking down A Thoi, he became incredibly conceited, declaring, "So this is the combat power of the Thuvong nation, pathetic." This arrogant outburst made the Poison Master's blood boil, but his way of venting his anger was just to let out a chuckle. While the Poison Master was smiling in amusement, Hoan Kwong realized that one of his legs had been completely severed. As it turned out, the Poison Master had anticipated A Thoi would do something foolish, so he had secretly coated him with a special poison. If A Thoi's body was subjected to an impact force exceeding 1,700 newtons, then it would trigger a backlash. So, when A Thoi took a kick, Hoan Kwong lost a leg. He collapsed in agony, and his comrades rushed over to stop the bleeding, but everyone who came into close contact with the poison suffered a similar fate. So in a way, A Thoi had actually done something useful, but as his body remained plastered to the cliff wall, he felt that his life had become so meaningless. Following the memories of A Thoi's endless cycle of lives, he finally felt a bit of sympathy. Perhaps it was because of that event that A Thoi's personality became so difficult, and his abilities declined so much. Returning to the fateful battle 10 years ago, in just the blink of an eye, Hoan Kwong and his two comrades, who touched the poison, were completely corroded. They vanished right before the general's eyes, making him absolutely furious. The Poison Master seized the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. He pulled out 3 vials of antidote, and chuckled innocently. "I had just taken out the antidote when these 3 people disappeared. They're gone. How could that be? How embarrassing for you. We received intel that 3 traitorous awakened ones fled to the Guardian Nation. If you continue to obstruct their capture, we will be forced to take countermeasures," the general shouted. But for these invaders, it was clear the 3 traitors were just an excuse to turn this place into a real-life monster hunter dungeon. The Poison Master, still wearing that mocking smile, replied, that's right, the 3 traitors from the Fierce Island Nation were just killed by me. Just take those 3 piles of goo back to your superiors and you're done. No one's joking with you. Now get out of the way." Seeing his opponent roar like a beast, the Poison Master finally dropped his mocking demeanor. He pointed at the large electromagnetic cannon on their mothership, along with several large bombs with peeling paint, and asked, "Was this sponsored by the Lighthouse Nation? Are you all so willing to sell your lives for them?" Seeing that the Poison Master had figured out the truth, the men from the Fierce Island Nation fell silent. Seeing this, the Poison Master continued his verbal assault. "I have an idea. How about you form an alliance with the Guardian Nation? If they can sponsor you, so can we. The important thing is, we're kind and genuinely want to be friends. We won't order you around like you're trained dogs." The Fierce Island Nation's acceptance of sponsorship from the Lighthouse Nation to attack the Guardian Nation was due to their failing economy, but The Poison Master's comparison to training dogs was just too venomous. The veins on General Tamdao's forehead, a man with power worthy of an SSS rank awakening, began to throb. But the Poison Master's trash talk didn't stop there. "Hey General Tamdao, how about you immigrate to the Guardian Nation? You're a high ranker too. Come over, give our guild president a few gifts, and maybe he'll give you Trong Dao Hai's position as vice guild president." These words were far too malicious, and General Tam Dao's anger immediately exploded. He sent the first two warriors out from the ranks preparing for an attack. The reason the Poison Master had been talking so much was to stall for reinforcements. But without a regression system to turn back time, his options were running out. It seemed they couldn't wait any longer. The Poison Master glanced around. All the reliable people had already arrived. Within a radius of 100 to 500 kilometers, there were no more awakened who could change the tide of this battle. Anyone below S rank who came would just be cannon fodder. Besides, if they kept stalling, who could be sure the enemy wouldn't call for more people too? Trong Dao Hai had never felt this tense. As a high ranker herself, she felt this fight was incredibly bleak, a stark contrast to the usual overpowered MC Manhwa plots where victory was assured. "Actually, it's not like there's no chance of winning," the Poison Master said calmly. He then began to assign tasks. He declared he would personally take down General Tam Dao and the other 8 S-rank awakened, a feat straight out of a reincarnation power fantasy. Hearing him say he'd take out the entire enemy side, Zhong Tushi thought she must have misheard. Even if the Poison Master had a genius-level IQ and was an overpowered MC Manhwa protagonist, taking them on to fight 9 people was a bit of an overreach. "Have you forgotten how strong I am? Outsiders all think that I and the guild president fought to a draw, but in reality, I was the one who won. You haven't forgotten that, have you? Besides, when you and the guild president teamed up, you still lost to me." Zhong Tushi knew the Poison Master was trying to reassure her, but she still felt uneasy. Besides, during their last fight, this cunning old man had tricked her and the guild president into drinking a powerful laxative, which is how he won. But, regardless, it was true that he was incredibly strong. On the Retu Nation's side, the 2 warriors sent out by General Sandao had just simultaneously swallowed some kind of pill, after which they were like raging bulls recklessly charging forward. Zhong Tushi couldn't stand still any longer, thinking that overanalyzing the situation was now useless. It was time to risk it all. But the Poison Master found this move by General Sandao a bit puzzling. Was he sending these nobodies here just to die? Was he trying to probe their strength? The answer came to the Poison Master quickly, as the 2 warriors suddenly shouted in unison, "Banzai!" Their eyes turned bloodshot, and their skin began to crack open, their charging speed seemingly increasing. Old Man Ha got goosebumps just looking at the sight. Blood-filled pupils and cracked skin, these were the signs of someone who had consumed a Jade shatter pill. He hurriedly shouted, signaling the awakeners on his side not to charge forward, then used his magic staff to erect a massive ice wall, with no openings. This colossal wall drained a great deal of Old Man Ha's energy. "Akui, bring me a heart-saving pill now." Hearing his master's voice, Akui grew anxious, but unfortunately all of his bones had been shattered, leaving him unable to move. Another awakener saw this and rushed over to help him retrieve the heart-saving pill. The Poison Master cursed under his breath. If the enemy was using Jade shatter pills, things were about to get really messy. This item could unleash 100% of the body's energy instantly. Releasing 100% of one's energy even from a cup of water could theoretically launch a rocket to the moon, let alone from a gifted awakener. Old Man Ha's ice wall wouldn't last long against their assault. Seeing him trembling non-stop, the Poison Master signaled for all the support-type awakeners and anyone who knew reinforcement magic to rush forward and provide support. Old Man Ha's energy was rapidly draining, and just at the moment he collapsed to his knees, thinking he couldn't hold on any longer, the man named Pham arrived in the nick of time with the heart-saving pill. After taking it, Old Man Ha hurriedly began increasing, his power making the ice wall even more solid. The others also moved up using various support spells to reinforce the wall. On the other side, the warriors who had taken the Jade shatter pills were relentlessly pounding on the ice wall, but couldn't make it budge. Seeing this, one of them resorted to an insane tactic, self-destruction. He hugged the wall tightly and shouted loudly again, "Banzai," one more time, after which his energy release process reached 100% and his body exploded. On the sturdy wall, a large crack appeared. The glimmer of hope that the people of the Shaowang Nation had just found was now suddenly extinguished. If the remaining 19 warriors all self-destructed, the wall would be completely shattered. Zhong Tushi couldn't let that happen. As the only archer here, she took the initiative, leaping over the wall to launch a preemptive strike on the group of warriors. Previously, Zhang Tu-shi fought desperately for a few moves, and launched an enemy about to self-destruct into the sky. The explosion went off right in mid-air, but it was still powerful enough to make the ground and old Xia's wall tremble. This mob is a real pain to deal with. General Sandao shouted an order to his men. She won't dare to engage you in close combat. 4 of you just need to hold her down. The rest of you go blow up the wall. That's the only way to eliminate more of their combat power. The warriors did exactly as he commanded. The 4 largest ones rushed forward and desperately latched on to Zhang Tu-shi, while the rest began to approach the wall. With her limbs pinned down, Zhang Tu-shi suddenly broke into a sarcastic smile. Haha, you're making me so mad. It's actually funny. You little punks think I'd be scared just because you can self-destruct. You're seriously underestimating the combat power of one of the top fighters in the Guardian Kingdom. All 4 of those bastards were sent flying by Zhang Tu-shi with a single blow. Then she grabbed 2 of them with her bare hands and charged towards the ones approaching the wall. Zhang Tu-shi spun a continuous 360 degrees, dragging both of them along and using them as weapons to smash away the others. The result of pissing off this tigress was that they all self-destructed but failed to break the Guardian Kingdom's ice wall. While Zhang Tu-shi single-handedly dealt with the 19 warriors, the others weren't idle either. The experts from the Guardian Kingdom were almost all seasoned veterans with vast combat experience, so they weren't flustered facing the enemy. The Poison Master, with his innate talent for poison, was also easily handling a dozen enemies by himself. Even so, he was distracted during the fight. The Poison Master had been feeling that something was not quite right. These guys from the Lai Dao Kingdom, even if they win this battle, will still suffer heavy casualties. Then, when they enter the Guardian Kingdom, how could they possibly fend off other ambushes, even if we let them pass this time? In less than 7 days, they'd probably be exhausted and get wiped out. Besides, if they have reinforcements, it would be even harder for them to win, because by the time their backup arrives, our own reinforcements from the Guardian Kingdom would be here too. What benefit does this battle ultimately bring the Lai Dao Kingdom anyway? If they want to plunder resources, they first have to successfully conquer us. The more the Poison Master thought about it, the more this felt like a high-cost, low-reward war. There's no way the Lai Dao Kingdom would do something so foolish. What on earth are they planning? He couldn't figure it out. Whatever, I'll focus on winning first. The Poison Master began speaking into his comms again. Tian Qi, when the countdown timer hits 3 minutes, give me a heads up. Roger that. After speaking with Tian Qi, the Poison Master turned to remind Qi how not to stray too far. He needed to stay put and handle the data analysis for all 618 of these invaders from the Lai Dao Kingdom. Knowing the enemy's weaknesses provides a massive advantage. For instance, right now, the Poison Master had cornered an enemy who had the same type of poison-based talent as him, but before he could finish the guy off, Mr. Fan jumped in. It wasn't because he wanted to steal the kill, but to free up the Poison Master to focus on strategy. In this whole Monster Hunter dungeon, he was the only one who could think of a way to win this battle. Elsewhere, Zhang Tu-shi was getting absolutely wrecked by Sandao, even though they were both archers. It seemed this guy was a cut above her. His grass string sword dance skill had already crippled one of Zhang Tu-shi's hands. He even forced Zhang Tu-shi to reveal her trump card, an ultimate move on the level of an SSS rank awakening called the Buddha's 3-part pagoda. Her speed skyrocketed after activating her skill so much that the grass-cutting sword dance could no longer keep up, all in the blink of an eye. Zhang Tu-shi closed in on Tam Dao, but her powerful punch was blocked by the Yata no Kagami in his hand. I've already lost an arm, yet she can still push me this far. She's a true overpowered MC, Tam Dao thought to himself, gritting his teeth as he fought back. The third stage of Zhang Tu-shi's Buddha's might was no longer enough to handle the opponent. She might have to unleash the fourth stage. She started to worry. On an ever-changing battlefield, revealing her trump card without being able to finish the opponent would be disastrous. Zhang Tu-shi had to retreat a few steps. She glanced to her left, saw the Poison Master standing there dumbfounded, and shouted, "Poison Master, damn it, are you going to fight or not? Shut up, don't bother me, didn't I say?" Tam Dao and the S-rank Awakeners were mine to handle. You're all talk. That guy is relentlessly attacking me over here. The Poison Master completely ignored Zhang Tu-shi. His mind was in turmoil. If he couldn't figure out the enemy's objective, he couldn't fight properly. The Poison Master kept pondering, and although he looked calm amidst the battle, in reality, his mind was racing until an Awakener from the Li Dao Nation prepared to launch a kick straight at the Poison Master's face. When he suddenly had a realization, the Poison Master broke into a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Then with one hand he grabbed the Awakener who was trying to ambush him. "I know what your objective is now." The Poison Master used the most menacing tone possible and whispered into his opponent's ear. Sure enough, the guy immediately bolted and didn't stop running. The Poison Master then burst out laughing. "Haha, the idiot fell for my bluff." Meanwhile, Zhong Tushi was ferociously plowing through enemies like a one-woman army, but that Awakener still braved her storm of attacks to return to Tam Dao's side. Naturally, he was returning to his general to report that the Poison Master had figured out their secret. Tam Dao immediately became alarmed and leaped high into the air for a better vantage point. Then he ordered his S-rank Awakeners to prioritize attacking the Poison Master, using any means necessary to take him down. The S-rank Awakeners of the Li Dao nation were spread out across the battlefield. But upon hearing Tam Dao's command, they immediately began to converge. Zhong Tushi thought she would finally get some breathing room, but she was instantly swarmed by a horde of A-rankers, like a raid boss in a monster hunter dungeon. At that moment, Old Ha was also busy, facing off against an S-ranker. When that S-ranker heard Tam Dao's order, he tried to rush towards the Poison Master, but Old Ha was afraid that the Poison Master couldn't handle it all alone, so he tried to pin this one down to lessen the burden on his friend. But Old Ha's stamina was already running low, and as he poured all his strength into an ice shield to restrain the S-ranker, he was blindsided by a huge figure from behind. It was a one-shot kill. Old Ha's head was literally ripped from his shoulders, leaving his body standing vacantly. His magic staff fell from his hand as the intense battle between allies and enemies raged on around him. Soon his headless body was knocked over and trampled underfoot by countless fighters, and the entire horrific scene was witnessed by A Thoi. His own body was already shattered, and he had to witness his master's gruesome murder, the kind of tragedy that often triggers an SSS rank awakening. This was undoubtedly the worst moment of A Toi's life. By now, the S-rank Awakeners from the Li Dao nation had surrounded the Poison Master and began their assault, using their superior numbers to overwhelm him. Two mages, among them, coordinated their attacks, attempting to lock him down. One of them turned the ground beneath him into a liquid-like substance. Stepping into it would be like a fish caught in a net. The Venomancer quickly leaped up to escape it, but before he could get high enough, he was slammed down by another hunter's pressure skill from above. This crushing weight was incredibly hard to resist. It seems a team of S-rank hunters is truly a tough opponent. The Venomancer cursed under his breath, using all his strength to withstand the aerial pressure while trying not to fall into the mire below. While he was caught in this dilemma, the awakened hunter, who had fallen for his trick earlier, charged in again. Seeing the Venomancer's hands were restrained, and thinking he couldn't use poison, the hunter smugly went in for a kick, not expecting a thing. He fell for the same trick again. "Watch out, Tojo, this guy is the monster who took out Iron Apex," his comrade shouted, seeing him get too close to the Venomancer, but the warning came too late. At that moment, a cunning smile reappeared on the old man's lips. His hands might be bound, but the Venomancer can release poison from his entire body, and this time, it was from his chest. The fool couldn't stop his kick in time. His leg was hit with the poison and it even splashed onto his face. The corrosion happened in an instant, and he collapsed to the shock of his teammates. This isn't some low-level monster hunter dungeon where you can make mistakes like that. How could an S-rank awakened be so foolish? The Venomancer sneered, but you other idiots are way too close too. As soon as he said that, the Venomancer opened his mouth wide and spewed a cloud of poisonous mist. All the surrounding hunters scrambled to get away from the toxic fog. But one unlucky bald guy was caught by the Venomancer. A decisive neck snap took just 2 seconds, sending him to meet his ancestors. After the kill, his body felt more relaxed. This old man was waiting for this very moment. Then another attacker appeared. This time, it was a woman with a sword attacking from behind with a clean and decisive strike. Luckily, the Venomancer was agile, old but not obsolete. Although he wasn't killed, he was wounded and bleeding. With no escape route, the remaining S-rank hunters slowly closed in on him. After fighting so hard, there were still 6 of them left. The Venomancer wasn't sure how much longer he could hold out. What's worse is that earlier, when he spat the poison, Mishima had activated his 8-foot Magatama to see through his ability, a power worthy of an SSS rank awakening. He saw that when the old man opened his mouth, there was a storage-type formation character on his tongue. This means the Venomancer just implanted a few spatial formations on his body to store the poison. This wasn't a reincarnation power fantasy, it was a clever system. During combat, he uses muscle movements to trigger these formations and release the toxins. Even worse, Mishima could share his Magatama's vision with the other hunters, allowing them to see the spatial formations on the Venomancer's body. Now that his secret was exposed in their eyes, the Venomancer was just an ordinary person with an enhancement-type talent, not some overpowered MC Manhwa character. But strangely, he didn't seem worried at all, despite being exposed. Either the Venomancer was truly fearless, or he was just that good at hiding it. You little flies see a few cracks in a stone and think you can shatter it. How ridiculous. The Venomancer accelerated targeting the swordswoman and landing a kick. His speed was so fast she couldn't react, even though she knew beforehand that the Venomancer would release poison, and exactly where it was stored on his body, she still couldn't react in time. This isn't a regression system story. There are no do-overs. Luckily for her, a comrade managed to create a defensive barrier just in time, blocking the Venomancer's poison from hitting her. That so-called poison-gifted awakener struck again. He'd always considered the Venomancer a worthy opponent because he shared the same poison-type talent, but after seeing through the Venomancer's tricks, he felt insulted. He was even more eager to see if the magic formation on the Venomancer was stronger or if his own Poison Yao talent was superior. Activating the skill, Poison Fang Tool Seal, he created countless large tentacles that constricted the Venomancer's body, each one laced with potent toxins. A single touch would cause immediate infection. The Venomancer recognized this poison was like the plague, but with his abilities, it wasn't life-threatening. More importantly, the Venomancer had the 100 poisons antidote, and popping a few pills made him as strong as an ox again. He broke free from the tentacle's grip and charged towards the poison-type awakener. He was just about to strike him, but Tam Dao interfered. This tech user officially joined the campaign to eliminate the Venomancer, to silence him for good. And it wasn't just him, the huge armored guy joined the assault as well. One of his punches could have turned the Venomancer's brain to mush. Luckily, he activated his poison armor in time, but he was still sent flying by the blow. To be able to fight the S-rank top masters of the island nation, to this extent, you are truly a respectable opponent. The Venomancer spat as he sat up, blood pouring from his forehead and nose. Most of his teeth had been knocked out. He looked incredibly battered, but this was exactly the effect the Venomancer wanted to achieve. The weaker he appeared, the more his opponents would think he was exhausted. The Venomancer wanted to lure the enemy in deeper, just a little more. Then his poison could claim at least 2 more lives. In truth, from the very beginning, the Venomancer still didn't know what their goal was, but if someone had to make a desperate sacrifice, he wanted it to be him. However, that sacrifice couldn't be in vain. He needed to take down as many enemies as possible with him. The group of Awakeners at this point was practically blinded by their eagerness to win. They all attacked the Venomancer at once, but he used their chaotic assault to counterattack. However, those foolish S-rankers just thought the Venomancer was struggling hopelessly. Only Tam Dao saw through his plan. Have you guys noticed? He's using the spatial limitations that we created to fight against us. When everyone focuses on attacking him, he can use this narrow space to take us out one by one. Tam Dao wanted to change their combat formation from a circular encirclement to a coordinated attack from the front and back. This would create more combat space, make it harder to get hit by the Venomancer's poison, and be more effective with someone in front as a shield. He wouldn't be able to see the person behind them, preparing a skill, making it easy to launch a surprise attack. The other Awakeners obeyed Tam Dao without question, immediately changing their formation. The big, armored guy in front was confident that his defense was second only to General Tam Dao's Yata mirror, so he took the lead to pave the way for his comrades to attack from behind. The small amount of poison the Venomancer released couldn't penetrate his armor, making him even more smug and complacent. Meanwhile, the two-horned guy in the back quickly rushed forward to launch his attack. His raging hellfire skill was incredibly powerful, capable of using extreme heat to incinerate everything, including the magic formation on the Venomancer. Unfortunately for them, they had fallen into his trap. Once again, as the two-horned guy closed in to attack by a stroke of fate, the distance between him and the big armored guy. The armored guy was so close that both of them were pierced by the Poison Master's blade, just like a shish kebab. So, your defense is second only to Bat Shih Kin, the Poison Master jeered, but my attack power is even greater than his Thao Tri Kiem. Hey, according to A, that was the first time the other Awakeners got to witness the Poison Master's true gift. This exact human skewer moment was when he truly used his innate ability. Before this, the Poison Master had only used his poison-type survival character formation, combining it with his intelligence to pull a fast one on everyone, making them believe he had a poison-type gift, but in reality, the Poison Master possessed a pure combat talent, a classic setup in any overpowered MC Manhwa. To be able to pierce 2 S-rank Awakeners like this, his true talent was just insane, like a true SSS rank awakening.